There he is.
Howdy.
How's it going, dude?
Is it going? Is it going all right? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm pretty good. I'm playing VISCERAFEST. Well, I'm watching VISCERAFEST from 9 years ago, but couldn't be doing better.
Yeah,
I could be doing better when the music gets added into Chapter 3. I want to be cryogenically frozen.
yeah. I I would be doing a lot better if we had the music done on time too. That would have been nice. Like basically what happened with that was like a month before the game was supposed to come out, our composer John S. Weekly, he messaged us and he was like, "Hey guys, like something came up in real life. I'm not going to be able to access any of my like software or anything I use to make music for a good long while, and I have no idea when I'll be back. So
What the
good luck."
fuck? I hope it's nothing too
So
serious.
he hasn't given. Yeah, so he has not given me very much in the way of details, though I have checked on him since. I've been like basically checking on him like every few weeks just to see where he's at. He hasn't given me much information, but my general intuition is it's something family related that's going on.
Hmm.
I can't confirm that obviously, but that's why the game's music wasn't done on time. Like we had the chapter 3 level 1 through chapter 3 level two's music done for the most part, but none of it was implemented into the game. I ended up having to drag in one of my old composers, Michael Markey, to help us wrap up the music for like get it in the game. And even then, there's still some stuff with the currently available chapter 3 music that will probably be changing once we get all the music done, just because I had to like jury rig implement it myself.
So, like when you
um
mean the music that wasn't done, I assume it's not just like the track itself, but it's how it plays through the level, like how it has like the ambient and the
yeah,
active
so,
parts and how
so
that flows together.
So the music itself might get some tweaks, but it's mostly how the tracks like transition between one another and stuff like that that might
Hmm.
not be complete. Like there might be some musical transitions that John ends up setting up that we don't currently have. But you know, we're never gonna find that out until like he gets back on board with us. Um, but yeah, yeah. So I started working on the game when I was 12. Like I was saying, there was so basically VisceraFest originally started life as like a Halo clone. It wasn't called VisceraFest originally. I think originally it was called Quarantined in the Worlds of War. Uh, because I was 12.
Yeah,
um, but
you're
yeah,
like
so
you're like
originally,
Zane from Hypnospace Outlaw and Slayer's X if he turned out not an idiot. That's crazy.
yeah. But yeah, so originally started life basically as like a Halo clone. And what ended up happening was around 20, because, so, okay, so 2012, I had never heard of a first person shooter before. I wanted to get into 3D animation. I had asked my dad to see if he could find me an application that I could use to do 3D animation when I was 8. He found me something, but I was 8, and, you know, learning how to use 3D development software is a nightmare. And the only material I think existed for the program I was trying to use at the time was like just like a wiki article basically. And so it was like, you know, just reading through like a dictionary's worth of information for an 8-year old. And I couldn't even comprehend half of what the words they were saying was. So basically, he found that for me, couldn't learn how to use it. Time passes. 2012, my dad finds me an application called Blender. And the versions of the game you're looking at right now, actually, they were made on Blender.
You have a cool dad.
Um, he is pretty cool. I love my dad. Um, but so he found me Blender and he was like, "Hey, there's like all these video tutorials and stuff. Like, I think you could reasonably pick this up and learn how to use it because I remember when you were 8, you were interested in getting into this stuff." And I was like, "Okay." And so I started messing around with Blender. Pretty quickly found out that it had a game engine. And I was like, and, you know, being 12, I was like, "You mean I can make video games with this thing?" Uh, and so from there, around the same time, I was just being introduced to first-person shooters for the first time. I think the very first FPS game I ever played was Battlefield 1942, um, and I wasn't really allowed to play much in the way of violent games, so I couldn't really. And you know, I didn't have money, so I couldn't go out and buy games of my own. So I was pretty much just like at the mercy of what can I find online for free. And Doom had a shareware episode available. Uh, and so I was able to play Doom for free on Newgrounds because somebody basically uploaded like a 3-pack of Doom, Heretic, and Hexen's shareware to Newgrounds. Um, and so that was how I was introduced to Doom. And then eventually I was introduced to the Doom modding scene. And through that, I found games like Marathon, Blood, and very quickly I shifted away from liking modern shooters to being like, I just love retro shooters. Like what they're doing here design wise is so much more compelling to me. Like it's actually Doom and Marathon that really actually started to make me think about game design. Because it was like, oh, like I have to think about like resource management and I have to like prioritize targets and I can run around. It's not just taking cover and whatnot.
And waiting
And
for
so
the
there was a
bloody screen
real
so real to regenerate your health
yeah
behind a wall. Yeah.
yeah. And so that really and so Doom really moved me in the direction of thinking about game design. And so very quickly, what initially started life as being just like a Halo clone, because I was big into Halo initially once I was introduced to first-person shooters. I was like, hey, I think I want to make like a retro shooter instead. And so I think around 2014, 2015, VisceraFest transitioned into full-on being like a retro shooter. Wait, was this in the 2010s? 90s? So 2012 is when I started working on what would become VisceraFest. It's like I said, it started life as a Halo clone. 2013, I was introduced to Doom. I'm looking at chat right now.
I just wanted to say there's like you answered a question I was gonna ask, which is like you're 25. I was gonna ask like how did you sort of fall upon like discover retro shooters? Because I'm 28. I'm a little older, but I also didn't start with games like these, and when I found them. I had the same. I smiled when you said like it made you think about game design because I found like retro shooters and thought, holy shit, what happened? You know, how did we go from this to like Call of Duty? What the hell is going on?
Yeah, I think the simple answer to that is Halo happened, and then what happened was a lot of people missed the point of a lot of the design decisions that exist in Halo, and and everything just got watered down from there. But with that said, so 2013 introduced to Doom. 2014 I was introduced to like Marathon and Doom's modding scene and all that stuff. And from there I was like, yeah, I want to make a retro shooter. And so I think pretty quickly VisceraFest started to look a lot like the current version of what it is now. The story was very different. I mentioned, for example, like so Athens. The story of how Athens came to be is
the husbands.
Yes. That's pretty funny. So, in an older version of VisceraFest's story, I was playing around with the idea of you having this companion character who would sort of be like your Cortana, basically. Still heavily being influenced by Halo. And so I think I basically ripped off Richtofen from Call of Duty Zombies, and and it was just like there was like this German scientist character who would accompany you throughout the game, and his name was Athens. And then at some point he changed from being a German scientist to being a defector from the United Scientific Conglomerate, which is like the sci-fi faction you fight in VisceraFest. So he was actually one of the trooper enemy types, which is like the green one-eyed girls that you see throughout the campaign. He was originally the same species as them until their lore changed. But eventually Athens just became this completely disconnected character from the USC. And so I was like, well, I really like the cutesy one-eyed design that I had for him at the time, but I can't have him be the same species because that doesn't really make sense anymore. And so, yeah, he basically ended up shifting from being like this German scientist character who is trying to help Carolyn overthrow the United Scientific Conglomerate to being Carolyn's husband.
I love him, the little
So
homunculus fella. I love the storyline
yeah,
of buying him a wedding ring. It's just such a, I don't know, I love
yeah,
it. It's hilarious.
yeah. So what happened there? Originally, VisceraFest's story was very I don't know of Bunray, Likestone. Um, but so originally the story for like the retro shooter VisceraFest was, I mean, the game was called Quarantine. It was you play as Carolyn, who was abducted by the United Scientific Conglomerate and being used as like a test subject for their bioweapons program. And the idea was like the game was like you break out of like containment and you're just trying to overthrow the USC basically. Um, you know, a basic kill the bad guy story.
Yeah.
It was super melodramatic originally, which felt really disconnected from the rest of the game at the time because I didn't have a means to tell the story. It was just like the end text doom thing we were doing basically, where it's like you reach the end of an episode and it's like, oh, here's like a paragraph. And so like the fact that the story was like kind of really dark didn't work because none of it could be tonally conveyed through the game. And it's like you got this bright neon sci-fi shooter, and occasionally you get like bouts of really dark text for no reason, and it's like this doesn't work. And so I think what happened was I reached this point where I was like, okay, I'm just gonna completely rewrite VisceraFest's story, and I'm gonna take the elements from the current iteration that I like, and I'm gonna just do something completely different. So that led to, and I was like, it's got to, at least at the beginning, it needs to start a lot more lighthearted. And so I was like, and that's how I basically came up with the idea of you're playing as a bounty hunter, hunting down a warlock so she can buy her boyfriend a wedding ring and propose to him. And from there, I think at the time I was getting, so this would have been 2016 time frame for reference. I was getting really big into H.P. Lovecraft, and I was already planning on the latter portion of the game having like other dimensional stuff in it anyways, so I kind of tailored the game's story elements around a lot of Cthulhu Mythos stuff. Since then, Lovecraft has become a lot more popular, I'd say. So basically, VisceraFest is incredibly cold to the hitting the iron while it's frozen, as they say.
It's okay.
Where,
Now we know you were actually a precursor, a bit of a trendsetter.
yeah, like
They copied you.
I mean, this was like, I mean, I even joked like Doom Eternal stole a lot of our design philosophy, because, I mean, a lot of the like trying to push the player and incentivize them to play a certain way was something we were doing well before Doom Eternal came out, and then it was like, oh, I guess Doom Eternal is trying to do the same thing. That's cool.
So you knew early on that you were going to have this focus on like sort of tight arenas, and have the combat play out in that.
Well, so I wouldn't even say there's been a focus on tight arenas. It's more so for me, when it comes to retro shooters, the core pillars of a retro shooter are aggression as the primary means of engagement. You're not hiding. You're not peeking around corners. You're like actively engaging the enemy. You have resource management combined with target prioritization. So there's this really big focus on what enemies you take care of first, because certain enemies pose different levels of threat, and if you let certain enemies live for too long, they'll screw you over. You have resource management where you have limited ammo pools, but this is then combined with certain weapons being optimal for dealing with certain enemy types. Which makes you think like, what weapon should I use against which enemies? And then you're constantly going, oh, but what if I save ammo for this weapon for later instead of using it right now, because I might be put in a situation where I want to use this weapon against this. It creates like, for me, retro shooters are really fast-paced strategy games, and it's about, and with VisceraFest, I really wanted to push that element to the forefront. Of like, you need to be like thinking like, what weapon am I using against which enemy? How much ammo do I have? Just all those things have to be right. Like, I knew around, I want to say 2018, 2019, I wanted those elements of the game to really be pushed to the forefront, in a way that no other retro shooter at the time was doing, because you had games like Dusk that were coming out pretty soon around that era, I think. And I kind of felt like Dusk, well, I enjoyed Dusk, but I felt like it wasn't capitalizing on a lot of what I liked about retro shooters.
Yeah.
Like, ammo was super abundant to the point where you didn't have to, like, there was incentive to use weapons against enemy types, but a lot of retro shooters kind of overflow you with ammo to the point where if you want to, you can just kind of mindlessly run and gun.
There's one pillar that I think like you're so focused on like combat that you didn't even mention like the whole like exploration, like secret finding aspect. And to me, like these retro shooters are often like the combat is so non-challenging that it ends up being like it's almost like a fun distraction, and then the real meat is like spending an hour like hitting E on every wall and trying to find secrets behind posters.
Yeah, I mean, so, I mean, we do focus a lot on level design. There was a degree to where, particularly, you can tell with Chapter 3. So the Chapter 3 levels are the biggest levels in the campaign. Like, they were massive tasks to try and make. And one problem we kept facing was, internally, we had a schedule that we had established with our publisher. And the Chapter 3 levels were just taking so long to make that we ended up having to rush our way through making a lot of them. And the initial iterations of, like, basically what would happen is we'd be working on a Chapter 3 level. We'd get to a point where it's like, well, we have to move on. We can't keep working on it. And we would basically have to leave it in a broken, unfinished state. And what this meant was there were a lot of ideas I had for Chapter 3 that I really wasn't able to capitalize on. Like, I wanted to do a lot more horror segments in Chapter 3, and we just couldn't do it. Because I didn't have the time to properly plan and kind of play things out. We had, I'm trying to think. Basically what ended up happening was we reached the end of development on Chapter 3, and all the levels were not done. Like, they had, like, rough outlines of what they were, but they were a broken mess. So we ended up basically having to spend like 3 to 4 months just going through the entirety of Chapter 3 and making it not a disaster. Like, and like so much happened during that period, it's even hard for me to remember. Like, Chapter 3's development alone probably took like, I mean, it did take like 2 years. Just because of how ambitious what we were trying to do was, and how little time we had to do it, ended up meaning that we ended up having to keep delaying the game, like even more than we wanted to, just so that we could, just try to get, like, make it playable. Because, Chapter 3 was super rough early on. Like, the enemy roster for Chapter 3 kept changing constantly. Like, because the problem was I knew we were going to replace basically the entire enemy roster with Chapter 3, but the problem I very quickly realized was Chapter 1's enemy roster was so well-rounded, Chapter 1 and 2's enemy roster was so well-rounded that we would get to Chapter 3 and it was like, oh, but we're missing an enemy type that has, like, this role in the combat space. We're missing an enemy type that has this role or allows the player to use this way. And so it was like, we just kept having to iterate on the Chapter 3 enemy roster. So we'd be like in the middle of working on like the second to last level of Chapter 3, and we'd make some major change, like an enemy would get cut, or we'd add a new enemy, or just stuff like that was constantly happening through Chapter 3's development. It was a nightmare.
You didn't make things easy for yourself by actually saying, having the confidence to say, you know, we have this fantastic enemy, and I felt the same way. Like by Chapter 1 and 2, you have like the DOSC troopers, and there's so many different enemies, and they're all so creative, and they're all like different threat levels and different types of threats, and you always have to think about the encounters to say, fuck it, we're dumpstering all that and we're making new enemies. That's crazy to me. And I was actually feeling in Chapter 3, like initially, like, oh, I don't know how I feel about these guys. I miss my big encounters with like the 7 fucking types of dudes. And then the big elevator fight hit, and I was like, oh yeah, that's it. We're back in business.
C305, Damnable Descent, it's very much like we introduce all these new enemy types. We need to have a level where, so one big thing that pisses me off with some games is, random tangent, is you'll be playing Wrathion of Ruin suffers from this in spades. is you'll have games that they'll introduce like new enemy types or whatever late into the game, and it just feels like they never have a chance to capitalize on those enemy types. Where it's like you've introduced this really cool new enemy, and because he's a late game enemy, you barely have a chance to actually fight them and get to like see, oh, what are like some interesting combat and encounter setups you can do with this enemy, or what's some like interesting like scenarios you can create with this enemy type. Like, what's the extent to which the ideas this enemy type introduces can be used? And it feels like like you just never get to see that happen because the developers. And so one issue, so with C305, it was very much like, I've introduced all these enemies, I need to start using them in really big combat encounters and create different encounter setups with them, because I don't want to run into that scenario where it's like, oh, the possibility space of what this enemy introduces just was never taken advantage of. I never wanted that to happen.
It's funny you mentioned Wrath. Actually, I'm sorry for kind of like
you're fine.
I mentioned the game actually a lot. It's that not only does it introduce some enemies like super late, but it's also that the levels are so huge, and there's so much game in Wrath that it feels like you can sometimes go like hours without seeing something new. And it ends up diluting the pacing, like I think way too much. That was my biggest issue with Wrath. The pacing was just awful.
Wrath's pacing is a travesty, and the problem, I mean, like, there are so many baffling decisions that they made with Wrath, and I blame most of it on the lead developer just making really baffling decisions. Like, for example, at any point in Wrath, you can just go back to the hub. Like, you don't even need to finish a level, you can just go back to the hub. And that creates so many balancing nightmares you have to deal with. For no reason. There's no reason to return to the hub and play another level. Like, it's not like, oh, you can take this one thing in one level and go to another with it. No, it doesn't introduce anything into the possibility space. It just creates a headache that the developer now has to design around. And one issue you particularly see with Wrath is they introduce, you got me speaking about Wrath, man. Like, I don't want to say too much more about Wrath because I could be here all day talking about it. But
that game has, like, it's got problems.
Yeah, but one issue speaking of enemies in the possibility space, one pacing issue that Wrath has that drives me insane is they introduce some enemy types in like episode 1, right? So you've got like, I think they're called the Stricken. They're these really big frog-like enemies that spit acid projectiles at you, right? So at the beginning of the game, you'll typically fight 1 or 2 of them at a time, And traditionally, what you would see pacing-wise in a retro shooter is you're introduced to this enemy, and it's like, great, the enemy's not that big of a deal, or initially it's a big deal, but as the game progresses, they kind of become trivial. With Wrath, you never have that escalation where it's like, oh, now I'm fighting 5 of them, or something like that, right? Like, it's always like, oh, here's 2 Stricken, or here's 1 Stricken, and then you're in episode 3, and it's like, oh, here's 1 Stricken. You're like, you're not gonna escalate or build up or do anything more. Like totally. In episode 3, like 90% of the enemies you fight are just low tier fodder enemies, and it's like, why? You've escalated to the point where you can very clearly like do more with the enemy roster than what you're doing, and it's like you absolutely refuse to for no tangible reason.
I didn't even play chapter 3, and I felt the same way, like playing chapter 1 and 2. It never feels like it's building towards something. It, like, every level sort of feels like it's the same, like the game is like flatlining in terms of pacing for the whole experience.
And that drives me insane.
Yeah, I think they just got too carried away, I think, with one philosophy, which was like a very masturbatory of like, how big and complex can we make the levels without then thinking, then how do we make the game flow into those massive levels? And that was probably, I think, I don't know the development at all, but like a source of a lot of problems.
I think his name is Killpixel, was the lead dev, and I get the feeling that his general inexperience with the genre, from what I've heard, seems like it was probably the deciding factor in a lot of ooh, excuse me, a lot of the major design decisions.
Wasn't the game marketed as like being made by veterans of the Quake modding community?
So they had mappers and stuff from the Quake modding community, but KillPixel was the lead developer, and I think he worked with the Dark Places engine, but I don't, when I say inexperienced, what I mean is like I don't think KillPixel very clearly thought out a lot of the design decisions that were made. It like is I think what was probably the leading factor, because yeah, like I like a lot of Wrath levels, but it very much feels like they don't take advantage of the spaces that they have. And it really doesn't feel like they do anything interesting with the exploration most of the time.
I mean, I think...
And yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to talk about Wrath all day.
one more thing that drove me insane, because you touched on something with like the exploration. I thought it was really weird too. Instead of having like tailor-made secrets, you had these like nondescript chests that would just like poop out resources for you. And I thought the item system was like kind of baffling. Like you could stack so many like items that would just completely destroy any hope for the game to have a difficulty curve. It's like at any time you can turn on invincibility. At any time you can heal for free. You can do all this crazy shit, and you can just like accumulate these like game-breaking items that don't add anything fun to the gameplay. And that one thing I liked about VISCERAFEST is the lack of activatable pickups. You know, that I think was a smart decision.
That's my thing. I actually liked the power-up system in Wrath. The problem for me is there's just no incentive to use them. Like, the problem is that your base weapons are more than enough to get you through the campaign. And if you're going to introduce a system like that, you have to justify its existence.
It's this,
It can't just be like, ooh, here's a cute toy you get to play with. It's like, no, I need to use these if I want to make it through the experience. And if I don't, I will actively have a harder time. And that's just not the case.
It's like, this weird thing where they exist almost outside of the combat ecosystem, but they also flatten it if you want to use these items.
Exactly. Like, for me, like and this is one of the reasons why it pissed me off that they locked the hardest difficulty behind a single playthrough, because it's like the only place you'll even get close to that is on the hardest difficulty setting, but you can't play on the hardest difficulty setting unless you beat the game once.
And by the time you've beaten Wrath, you don't want to play it again.
Exactly.
You probably don't want to play Wrath again before you get to the end point, honestly.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, so moving back to chapter 3 though, I definitely would not make the decision. I mean, like, story-wise, we had to reset the enemy roster, but basically what ended up happening was, one issue a lot of old retro shooters have is they always reach this point toward the end of the game where you're kind of burnt out, and there's just really nothing more interesting for you to see. And so, at least for me, I have this problem where it's like, I get to like the end of a game's second episode, or maybe the end, or like maybe the midway point of game's second episode, I'm like, I've seen all I need to see. There's nothing like too exciting or more that I'm gonna get out of continuing to play this game, because to be honest, a lot of old retro shooters just have pacing problems. Because they try to front load the experience with all the interesting content, and then the end of the game is just like the scraps of whatever's left over.
You're talking to the #1 Duke Nukem 3D disrespecter, and I generally think Duke Nukem 3D's only good episode is the first one, and then like takes a dive, like actual insane dive. Like I'm glad to hear someone else, say that idea, because yeah.
But Doom has the exact same problem, for example, right? Because like you get to the beginning of Doom episode 2, and it's like, okay, you get the plasma rifle, and you meet the Cacodemon, and it's like, what's left for you to see? Like, I mean, I guess you'll get the BFG midway through episode 2, but it's like, at that point, Doom only has 8 enemy types. Doom only has, like, Doom only has its 8 weapons, and all the levels you're gonna see after it don't do a whole lot that's all that interesting to keep your attention. So it kind of feels like the game peters out, and it's like, okay, I've seen all I need to see now. And so early on, I had this thing with VISCERAFEST where I was like, I have to make sure that like every step of the way we're doing something new. Every step of the way we're introducing some wrinkle into the experience. Every step of the way. And I think I took that a little bit too far, where where it's like in chapter 3, we completely reset the entire enemy roster, and it's not a decision I would make again. Like, it's a bold decision that, one, made our lives as developers needlessly more difficult, and two, I think it does somewhat introduce a pacing problem for the game's final chapter, where you have something of an entire total reset of the game's pacing, where we kind of have
Yeah.
to build back up to that that grand finale, so to speak.
I really felt that actually entering like the first level of chapter 3, where I was kind of like, it feels like we've kind of the reset button has been hit. Totally.
And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's more so that it's just not a creative decision that I would make again if I were to make another game, where I'm like, I would just want to keep building on what's already been established, as opposed to doing a complete reset and then building back up. I think that would have been much better. But overall, like, I'm still happy with how Chapter 3 turned out for the most part, even though I think it's most people's least favorite chapter. And I'd say that's probably more to do with the fact that, at least, not speaking of you, but most people just hate, like, the new enemies we introduced in Chapter 3.
Really? Which
Like,
one?
I think I think people hate the saplings. Like,
they're not interesting, but they're not like the little blue thing that comes running at you.
So the saplings are the little tiny enemies, ankle biters that blur your vision when they bite you.
Okay, the blurring vision shit is kind of annoying, yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, so for me, the reason I really like the saplings, one, because of what they incentivize you to do from, like, a weapons standpoint. Like, they encourage you to use weapons like not Kirkos's Wrath, the barbecue belter, the shredder assault rifles, the plague rifle, in ways that you ordinarily wouldn't use those weapons. But beyond that, what I like about them is they're a relatively low tier threat. They're not that meaningfully dangerous, but the fact that they blur your vision creates openings for other enemies in such a way where it's like you want to take care of them, because even though they're not a high tier threat, they can become a real problem if you let them lay too long. So I like them for that reason, but I understand, yeah, it might be annoying to some people. Another enemy people really hate are the adopted night gaunts, which are the enemies that you can't kill.
Yeah. The one that can die in like one punk shot and then turn into an orb and then they come back.
Yeah.
Oh, those are great.
Yeah, I like them. I mean, in general, they are the most, in my opinion, they're the most unique enemy in VISCERAFEST. Because it's like, they're basically a turret that can't move. They fire homing projectiles that don't damage you, but they teleport them next to you. And they have like an AoE effect around them.
Wait, they don't damage you?
No, the homing projectiles don't damage you. What they do is they teleport the night gaunt next to you, and the night gaunt has like this damaging aura around it. So that's how they moved.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. They have this damaging aura around them that slows you down and hurts you. So the idea is that like they're sort of an area denial enemy, effectively.
If their projectile hits the floor, do they teleport to that?
No. It's only if it hits you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I don't. It's just, to me, it's a really interesting concept. It does introduce some design. It introduces some design headaches, and a lot of people don't like them. Mostly because I think watching people play, a lot of people just try to like headbutt their way through VISCERAFEST, and they really don't think that critically about what weapons they're using against which enemies. Like, I've seen, you have no idea how insane it drives me when I see people use the quad shotgun against the helpless scientists that can't damage you or do anything. Like,
I learned quickly to cherish the bunker buster bullets.
Yeah, I'm not like, I'm saying the Deus Mortis.
Like, oh yeah. Oh my god, yeah. Holy shit. That has quad barrels? That felt like a lot more barrels to me.
Yeah, I've seen people shoot the scientists with that weapon, and I'm just like,
Yeah. You mentioned one thing earlier that I want to kind of touch on, where you said, how you wanted, how there's this idea of like what weapon works best against what enemy, mixed in with like resource conservation, where it's like, oh, maybe I can do like something slightly less optimal, like punching, like what's the giant bear alien thing that just shoots like a flurry of purple eyeballs that follow you?
I guess that would be I think you're talking about the Arachnospud. They're an enemy that's introduced in the first level of Chapter 2.
Yeah. Yes, that's the one.
So,
Yeah,
We call those potatoes. We call them potatoes.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, well, potatoes. Maybe I need to punch this one to death to conserve some like Deus Mortis ammo for later. And one thing in the starting level of VISCERAFEST was like kind of trying out setting things up that gave me a very sinking feeling was the when the game explains the shields, and I was very afraid that the game would sort of devolve into what I call flowchart gameplay, which I think is like very uninteresting, where it's like, oh, threat X has shown up, I need to use weapon A. Oh, threat Y has shown up, I need to use weapon B. And it ended up not being the case at all, and it's actually very intelligent in how it makes you use your tools, and I was very pleasantly surprised, because I was very afraid that the game would, very quickly become just a put the cube in the square hole type situation. But no, it was that was great.
There's some games that do that where it's like if the game basically becomes a game of rock paper scissors, and that's not super compelling or interesting. I think the way in general I try to do it is we have enemies that incentivize you to use certain weapons against them. It's like, hey, basically this is the kosher, optimal way to deal with this enemy type. And the game's resources are balanced around always giving you access to the kosher means to deal with what we put in front of you. But, one, ammo's tight, so obviously not everybody's going to... And people aren't going to intuitively know exactly what is the intended way to deal with every enemy. And then in addition to that, we try to create sort of secondary optimal means by which you can deal with an enemy, right? So for example, with the shielded enemies, obviously... you can't, like, the pun cannon and the barbecue belter are the best ways to deal with most shielded enemies, like, bar none. Like, if you have a shielded enemy in front of you, pun cannon, barbecue belter, best way to deal with them. But, obviously you're not always going to have ammo for those weapons, and sometimes we intentionally create scenarios where you won't have ammo for those weapons. So you might have to do things like rely on the pistol as a means to deal with the enemy, and we try to make sure that it's like these aren't the optimal ways you deal with these enemies, but there are still like ways you can deal with them where the game isn't insufferable. That in and of themselves also create potentially alternate optimal means by which you can deal with an enemy. So for example, one thing I know a lot of players have done is the drones, the enemies that when you punch them, they like release that little like sparks cloud.
I love that enemy. Yeah. The big white robot. Yeah.
So they're actually weak to melee. So one thing you can do is you can two-shot them with the pistol and then do an uppercut, and they're instantly dead.
Isn't it 3 shots and uppercut on Nightmare? Am I wrong?
It might be.
Am I stupid?
I'm not sure, because we rebalanced them mid-development to be a little bit more tanky because I felt they were too trivial. Because there was one point where I think you could like 3-shot them with the pistol and that was it, and they would be dead. Which I was like, we messed around with it and we were like, this makes them feel like too easy to deal with. We need to give them a bit more meat on their bones, so we buffed them. So it's probably different now. It used to be you could like 1-shot them with the pistol and then uppercut them and that would be it. But stuff like that, where it's like we create like means where it's like you can come up with alternate strategies to deal with enemies. We sort of have the main ways we design you to deal with those enemies, but then we also create like, secondary means. So for example, like one enemy I saw you kept punching a lot was the adopted troopers, which are... They're an enemy we introduced in Chapter 1, and in Chapter 3 they have like the ability to resurrect, basically.
Is it the melee guys who run at you, or is it like the trooper that shoots you?
The one that shoots you. Like, it has the 3-round burst, and then it has the grenade puzzle.
I have an addiction to... I uppercut way more than I need to, but when I see lined up dudes, like you mentioned the saplings, I just love getting a line of saplings and just, getting one big uppercut and then turning around, getting the other big uppercut, and everything explodes. It's just... It's too much fun, dude.
Yeah. So with the adopted troopers, if you point blank them with the bunker buster, it will insta-jib them.
Yeah, I noticed like the explosive weapons would cause them to just not go in corpse mode, but
we did actually. I made a tweak that kind of broke them a little bit. You're not supposed to be able to jib them with the pun cannon, but you can in the current version, so I'm fixing that. We made some changes to how the melee works against them. That meant that I ended up nerfing their corpses health pool, and I didn't think about the ramifications of that. And I was playtesting earlier today, and I was like, oh, you can just 1-shot them with the pun cannon now. That's not supposed to be a thing. But yeah, but in general, we try to create like, here's the optimal route to deal with an enemy, and here are like secondary optimal routes you can take. Because I think it's just more interesting if there's not one set way to deal with everything we throw at you. Like, give the players a little bit more freedom to like creatively express themselves.
And your game allows that, because one really cool thing with this whole, like, you can use you know, you have a bunch of alternate methods, is that so many of the weapons are like basically force you to think about where you're moving, where the enemies are moving, and you can sort of try to like maximize value and try to get like a big bunch. Like I took this clip, like I think it's in chapter 2. You start one level by coming out, like you're coming out of like a cemetery type thing, like out of a tomb, like when you've got all these cultists, and I kind of zoomed out, gathered a bunch of like shotgun cultists, blitzed back in front of the door, and I acid cannon Deus Mortis like 15 dudes at once, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, dude. they just like extremely loud meat explosion.
Yeah, exactly. And we try to it's just we want to just provide players with like have sort of the basically create scenarios that allow for actual strategy. As like have sort of the intended strategy and have secondary strategies the player can employ against enemies. Because I just think that's one, it makes the game more interesting because it's not just a mindless I can use my shotgun to solve all my problems. But it also, again, it allows players to it creates reasons for the players to even be creative in the first place. Because if you can just super shotgun every problem away, who cares? Like, you know, like there's no reason for you to engage with the game on any deeper a level than my shotgun go boom.
It's really nice to hear like that there was so much, you know, intentionality behind the like the design of the game, and how it didn't come out the way it did by accident.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like, and this is one reason why, I mean, it is hard sometimes, because, you know, obviously, the game requires you to rub more than 2 brain cells together to play it, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't like doing that. A lot of people don't want to have to rub more than 2 brain cells together.
And I've noticed, you know, like getting into tight games or getting to high difficulty and challenge content, I've noticed a lot of people just don't want to like drop the difficulty. Like if they start something that's too hard for them, they don't have, their ego won't allow them to just lower it.
Yeah, which is really bizarre. But moreover, one problem I consistently see, I think more than the difficulty, it's just the ammo that drives most people insane. Because here's the thing, for me, like, if I'm playing on, like, I genuinely can't judge how easy the easy difficulties are because they're so easy to me that I'm like, I mean, to give you context, on Nightmare,
I feel that.
I can make it through the first 6 levels of the game with over 200 to 300 health, right? So it's like, if I drop the game below Nightmare, like, the game just ceases to, like, have any bite for me.
Yeah, I see that. I feel that with some games I'm familiar with as well.
Yeah, so I'm like, I can't make judgment, like, I have to rely on other people to make judgment calls about how hard the game is. But if I'm playing on, like, the easier difficulty settings, like, anything below extreme difficulty, because that's when, like, we start to make changes to how many enemies you're fighting, I'm almost constantly hitting max capacity for a lot of my weapons. So when I see people complaining about like how much ammo they have constantly, I'm just like, I feel like that's a you problem.
Not only is it not only is it like a skill issue, like you're just bad, but also it's like you didn't get it, like you didn't. And I'd love to see how they actually played the game, like, you know, like seeing them run through a level. How did you end up losing all of your bullets? And just like still be at the first fight. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, I'm looking at the Steam forums right now. I had somebody say, I started this game on the lowest difficulty and I was constantly running out of ammo, even after I turned to double amount in the assist option. So
that has to be a joke.
I mean, it feels like it, but like this person is like going on a crusade against me right now. Like, it's insane.
I've seen, dude. I've actually seen on that topic. No, go ahead. Actually, I'm sorry.
I was good. Yeah, like there's a bunch of people I see complain about the ammo all the time, and it's just like I know it's because they're really just yeah, like, and I do really appreciate it. I have seen some players like run to our defense, and that always makes me smile. Like
That's
it
me.
reaffirms like, okay, it's not just me. Like people are being stupid.
You also pay us very well for each post that we make, so you know that helps.
Yeah. um, but with the game, we have lots of people who complain about the ammo. Lots of people who, yeah, but I was gonna say something, but I can't remember what I was gonna say. But yeah, it very clearly points to me like this is someone who's not willing to engage with the game on its terms. And it's actually because I've made comments like that. I've had people tell me that like, oh, I'm just incapable of taking criticism, and it's my ego that's getting in the way. Like I had this person who was like posting on like our patch notes the other day. So so there are a few levels that I've added a little bit of extra ammo for because there were players who were getting stuck. And it's like very tasteful, subtle adjustments. And somebody saw that like our patch notes said that we added more ammo to these levels. And hold on, let me read their comment to you because, like, I swear
you've killed the game. The casual crowd has won. It's over.
No, not even that. Like, hold on, let me find this person's comment. Like, I've seen some people who basically they act like I killed their dog or something. So this person says, "Oh, so now you add more ammo. It's too late, mate. The game didn't sell for crap." And then they post like the Steam charts,
crazy.
as if like the current player count has anything to do with how many like does this person not know how single player games work? That they're concerned about the player count.
Dude, Steam chart brain rot is real, man.
Yeah, and they say, and it's all because you didn't listen to feedback quickly enough. It full and well could have been the next big thing, maybe even on the scale of Binding Isaac, but you messed up completely, mate. You could have had it all, but the ego got in the way. Too slow, so sad, get wrecked.
Yeah. There's some creatures lurking around.
And I'm like, yeah, like some people just get so needlessly angry about it. I'm like, I understand if people don't like this. That's fine. Like, obviously my game is not for everyone. Like, I understand that I am catering to a relatively niche audience with VISCERAFEST.
That's me. I'm the audience.
Yeah. But in the midst of that, I just don't understand I understand the mentality being like slightly frustrated. Oh, I wish this game was better, or I don't, it's just not for me. I don't understand the mentality of this person has like killed my dog, had slept with my wife, and now I'm going to make it everyone's problem that this game is not the best thing ever made.
Yeah, I think
I don't get it.
you said something about how some players are just like unwilling to engage, and I've had this problem like playing Dark Tide for so long where Dark Tide isn't as tightly designed as VISCERAFEST, unfortunately. It's extremely poorly balanced, and you can pretty much turn off the game at any point if you want and just like walk through a level, and who cares? And people actually really like being able to do that. They really like not playing the game. They really like when the level flattens itself and nothing's a challenge. You never have to think about anything. And yeah, I can't even imagine how frustrating it is to have to deal with feedback coming from that crowd. Because it's like, holy fuck, dude. It's, yeah, just, I don't know. To turn down the difficulty, play something else. I don't get it. I really don't.
Well,
like, not only do I not get not wanting to engage with a game, because, like, what are you playing a game for? If it's not, you know, if it's not for the series of challenges presented before you, like you want a toy, you don't want a game. But then
exactly.
complaining about that the game is, like, made wrong because it doesn't allow you to disengage from it and still win, it's crazy.
Yeah, well, and that, I mean, like, that statement there is, like, exactly what I talk about, is a lot of people just, they don't want a video game, they want to play with a toy. And I think it's, like, I think it makes so much more sense to people when you use, like, sports analogies for this, funny enough, even though I hate sports. Like, a lot of the mentality that goes into the decisions about how sports are designed also applies to video games, right? So, like, you think about basketball, for example, right? In basketball, you have this action you perform called dribbling, which is bouncing the ball up and down, right? Now, bouncing the ball up and down is fun, but it's risky. And people inherently will optimize for the most efficient route to go about accomplishing a task. So, unless forced to, people will not dribble. So what they do for basketball is they say, hey, you have to dribble, otherwise you can't move, or there'll be, like, you know, there are penalties for not engaging with the game on its terms. And what dribbling does is not only is it fun to do because bouncing a ball up and down is fun, but it creates tension because it creates openings for other players to come in and steal the ball from you, right? And so it works on two fronts. It makes the game more engaging because you have to think about what you're doing, and it's a fun action that you can perform in spite of itself, right? And so it's all about, you have to make, when you're designing any game, you have to define the terms of what success looks like in a game, right? And because if you don't, then you basically leave, because every game has an optimal way to play it. And if you don't define the terms of what the optimal way to play it is, then you just basically leave it up to the mercy of however you've accidentally balanced it into playing. And so it's with designing any game, it's all about how am I defining the terms of success? How am I defining the terms of failure? And how do I create a rule set with punishments and incentives to push the player in the direction of engaging with the game in this way? And they do the same thing in sports. They do it with just actual games. And the problem is that a lot of people, they come to games not wanting a game. They come to games wanting a toy that they can engage with however they see fit, where they're basically just role-playing their way through the experience. And to me, that's not compelling or interesting. To me, that's not fun. When I come to a game, I want it to ask something of me. I want it to really demand that I engage with it on its terms. And you know what that might mean? There are some games I don't enjoy because I don't like the terms it's asking me to engage with them on. Like, I tend not to prefer real-time strategy games, for example. But I acknowledge that's a me problem. That's not a problem with the game. It's necessary that games really have a rule set and ask you to abide by that rule set, because that is what makes experiences like games so compelling. It's overcoming problems with a tool set that is provided to you and being creative within the boundaries of that tool set.
That was a bit anticlimactic.
Amen. Gulb agrees, but I think you're wrong actually, because dribbling, that's not a skill I want to learn, and I think the rule, like basketball, is just a badly designed game. Like, why would you ask me to dribble? Stupid fucking game, dude.
I know. Exactly.
It's so nice to hear like an actual developer talk like that, because sometimes you see like the endless stream of like casualized, like just the most uninteresting shit be pumped out, and you think like, surely there has to be someone out there, has to be a hero and has to understand like what makes games and like asking players to work to asking players to do anything is kind of rare nowadays in certain parts of the industry. So it's so refreshing to hear you explain what you think a game is and should be. And it's nice to hear that yeah, I'm right, everyone else is wrong, because this cool guy who made VISCERAFEST agrees with me. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why, for all the problems I have with Doom Eternal, I still really like Doom Eternal, because it's one of the few games that still that does have that mentality. For all the faults I have with it, I'm just like, for me, like between Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, I'm like, basically I'm trading evils of what's wrong with the game, and it's which evils do I prefer. And for me, like, the fact that Doom Eternal does still ask me to engage with it on its terms, for all its problems, still makes it more compelling than something like Doom 2016, where it's like, I'm just gonna upgrade this one weapon, and now I'm gonna use that one weapon for the entire campaign because it's the best option I have available to me.
There's a chatter who said something pretty pointed, I think. He's called CrazyLine88, but I'll just refer to him as Skeeter in case you're still reading chat and confused as to why I'm calling him Skeeter.
Yeah.
Saying, refreshing to hear versus devs saying dumb shit like players optimize the fun out of a game. And I think
Yes.
if players can optimize the fun out of the game, which means like removing the challenge elements, then you just have a badly designed game. Like I can't go into VISCERAFEST and optimize the fun out of it. Those two things don't add up. Like it just doesn't work, and that's the sign of a game that's well made.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly what I was saying earlier. Is you have, like, every game has a best way to play, right? Whether the problem is that most devs don't define the terms of what is the best way to play, and so what ends up happening is players define what the best way to play is,
and players go to the easiest thing, and it ends up making something that's unbelievably boring to play. But
Exactly.
and still is the best. It's just yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And so what you end up having to do is you have to say, okay, I have to make the fun way to play the best and easiest way to play, which means I have to make being an idiot and upgrading the super shotgun and only using the super shotgun for the rest of the game harder than taking a full advantage of the roster of weapons available to me. I have to, it's just finding ways to say, okay, how can I de-incentivize playing this in a dumb and stupid way and incentivize playing this in a way that's actually fun and engaging? How do I prevent players from optimizing the fun out of the experience
Yeah.
and instead optimizing the fun into the experience?
Exactly. That's a great quote. That's yeah. That's a great way to think. Yeah.
Wait.
There's one other thing I really liked with VISCERAFEST, which is a concept I've kind of been thinking about a bit after playing a demo for some literally who cares game called Metal Eden, which is I like the concept of like enemies as a resource, but they also need to still be enemies, and I think VISCERAFEST like manages that balance really well, where you're thinking, oh, these guys, you know, they're dangerous, but if I approach it well, I'm gonna come out like better than I was when I entered the fight. If I play right and I actually use my tools correctly, I'll lose some ammo, but I'll gain health and armor. And that's like, you know, that's cool because your game is like kind of the first example of that done in a way that's, you know, both really fun because exploding people is fun and cool, and or lining them up to hit them with I'm sorry, I don't know like the name of most guns, but the big tentacle Cthulhu gun that heals you and shoots the bouncing ball. You're trying to you're looking at like a conga line of like the old charging berserkers, and you're rubbing your hands like, oh yeah, I'm gonna line you guys up, and I'm gonna get so many extra giblets out of you, and it's always really fun, and on top of being cool.
Or heck, just like we have a room in the final level of chapter 1.
Don't spoil it.
No, it's in chapter 1.
Oh, okay.
So in the final level of chapter 1, there's a room we call the Thunderbird Hell Room, which is basically we just throw like a crap ton of Thunderbirds at you, and that room is so fun to just like charge the uppercut and wail through a horde of Thunderbirds. Just stuff like that, where it's like. I think it's so weird. I've seen some people with really odd takes about the game's pacing, where they're like, I literally saw someone say, the difficulty of the game's rooms changes from room to room. Like, it's so poorly paced and balanced. And I'm like, do you just want, like, every single room in the game to be, like, constantly, like, escalate and get harder?
Yeah, that's very boring. Like,
Oh,
like the idea that difficulty should be like a linear curve that goes up as you progress, with no variation, no surprise things. No, yeah, that's crazy.
That's such a weird take to me. I was just like, okay, I don't know what to do with that information. But yeah, like I like having. You don't want every room in a game to be like this oppressive. Like, you need like a challenge to be overcome. You want to have like rooms for the player to breathe.
Yeah, sometimes you just need like something fun to explode.
Yeah.
And sometimes you want the shambler to come running out of the bathroom in the tight corridor.
Yeah, and this is kind of the thing for me, like you were talking about, but like the exploration kind of function is like needs to break up pacing. The thing for me in particular is when I'm playing a lot of games, I don't tend to when I'm playing VISCERAFEST, I never get secrets. Like, I don't balance the game for you to get the secrets in VISCERAFEST. One, because I don't think it's fair to expect the players to get to need the ammo from secrets in order to succeed. And in general, I'm just like, I mean, there's secrets for a reason, right? So I don't actually, when I'm playing VISCERAFEST, I don't actually engage with the exploration that much. And I know there are a lot of other players who do the same, where it's just like, I'm just blazing through the experience pretty much. And a lot of it is like why we introduce puzzles or why we have little elements like that is primarily to act as a means to give the players who aren't like kind of just putzing around still that chance to breathe. And for me, I love puzzle platformers and stuff like that. So for me, it's just like it's just fun to have I love push puzzles, and I love I love platforming, and I love stuff like that. And so having those moments in a game where it's like, I get to do this stuff. Like, to me, it's just as fun as the combat. I know not everyone feels the same way, but I really enjoy stuff like that in games. And so I like to have a mix of those elements.
If you could make a toggle called like I hate breathing, that would just remove that. I think I screamed, I complained so loudly and meanly about the push pillars, like screaming something like, is it really like, do you really want to like after the arena fight I had, it's like, dude, that's not what I bought the game for, dude. If I wanted to go push blocks, I'd go play Sokoban or something on some place like, yeah.
Yeah, I personally really enjoy that stuff, so I like including it. But yeah, I will say, something we might do post-launch that I'd like to do is I'd like to have like a free play mode you can unlock, where it's like once you beat a level you can go through, and it will cut out like some of the scripted story stuff. Just because I know, like, especially
That'd be great.
Because you can unlock cheat codes and gameplay modifiers in VISCERAFEST that you can use when replaying levels. And sometimes it's like, personally, I really like the story stuff. But if that's just like, if you're like, when you're replaying through a level, it's like, I just want to like get to the game and mess around with stuff. I'd like to give players the ability to have that option. Where it's like, hey, like you can play through this level without having to worry about like this cutscene here or something like that. I think that would be preferable because, yeah, especially if you're replaying a level for like the 30th time, it's like, yeah,
it gets on your nerves eventually. Even if you like the writing in the story, it's like, okay,
exactly,
I get it. Stop, please. Awesome,
yeah.
Awesome.
It's like that moment in those moments in Doom 2016 where it's like you have to sit through the broken sequence of Olivia Pierce waving her hands in front of the hologram screen, where you're like, can we get through this? Like, I don't need to watch this again.
every fucking like part of Half-Life 2 that locks you in and forces you to listen to people talk while you can still jump around in like a room drive me crazy, dude. I feel like a rat trying to break out of its cage. That's actually something when you said you blamed like Halo, and someone in chat said it's like console games for like why we went towards the more linear stuff. But I actually think the game that broke the mold and kind of started this like allowed even for this new type of shooter to come out was actually Half-Life 1. And it did it by breaking the wall between narration and gameplay. So instead of having this, you play a Doom level, then you have a text scroll, then you play a Doom level, then you have a text scroll, then you play a Doom level, then the credits roll. And now you had like people talking at you all the time. And I think that was kind of when the seeds were sown, and eventually led to movie games.
Yeah, I mean, I do personally like games that have story in them. Like, I enjoy games having narrative. I also think that there are, how do I put this?
Ways to convey that narrative.
Obviously, when you have games that, like, shall we say, you have Kojima tier crap, where it's like, hey, here's like 30 minutes of cutscenes, and I'm like, why? I wanted to play
30 minutes? 30 minutes of cutscenes, buddy?
Well, I mean, like, no, when I say 30 minutes, I mean like for a single cutscene. Like,
yeah. There's 5 cutscenes in that one cutscene section.
Yeah.
I have a theory about that actually. Speaking of Kojima, I think it's because he's a bit of a dilly-dallier, and he like I actually quite liked Death Stranding, but the game basically Death Stranding, genuinely the last 30% of the game have like 60% of the narration. I think they just crammed it all at the end because like, oh fuck, we need to release this game next month. So yeah.
I actually never play that game, so I'm not sure what you're talking about. But oof, that sounds rough.
Yeah, it's alright. The writing can be. I thought actually the writing was like the weakest part. I thought the gameplay was pretty interesting, but like the writing has a couple of really good things. But then Kojima will drop like a incredibly stupid thing, like the Mario and Princess Peach stuff, and it happens at every story critical moment, and I wanted to fucking slam my desk every time. Like, this guy needs someone to put him in a leash or something and like tell him, like, roll up a newspaper and like bonk him on the head. It's like, don't say that, that's stupid, you just ruined the scene. Also naming the characters,
like Die Hard Man?
Yeah, Die Hard Man is called what's the name of the Bruce Willis's character in that movie, because that's his fucking name. There's a guy,
I didn't know that.
there's a guy called Cliff Unger. cliffhanger.
Oh.
I'm not joking. There's some stupid symbolism, like how Sam Strand bridges, and he's like the bridge between stuff. All the characters are called like Heartman, Deadman, and it's just like Deadman is Heartman has a weird heart. And yeah, it's just he doesn't understand symbolism. He really likes to, he thinks you're 5, and he really needs to like explain the whole thing to you. And it's yeah.
But to get back on track, point being,
Yeah.
I don't hate story stuff, but I do think one, I think you can be too overindulgent, and there are obviously preferable ways to handle story stuff and non-preferable ways to handle story stuff. And two, I think it's preferable, especially with a game like VisceraFest, that you provide players with the means to skip through it if they don't care, especially on repeat playthroughs. Like there's some stuff like we haven't had like there's a bunch of post-launch stuff we want to do that we're going to do. And that's one of the things. Like I said, I want to add like a free play mode, so when you're replaying through the game, you don't have to worry about that stuff. I'm not. A lot of whether we do that, I think will be a question of like how much of a pain in the butt is it going to be to implement something like that. Because yeah, I mean, there's some story sequences in Chapter 3, for example, that I would have preferred to just make a cutscene, so that way you can skip it. But we didn't have the money or time to do that. Like, there's a conversation. You haven't gotten to this part of the game yet, so I'm not going to spoil it. But there's a conversation between.
I can like put my fingers in my ears so you can tell the chat if you want.
No. I'm not going to spoil anything. There's a conversation between you and another character that happens in a level that you'll be playing soon, that is in game and it's not skippable.
Oh. I will complain.
That moment was something I wanted to make a cutscene, but we just didn't have the money or the time to go about doing it. So there's moments like that where I'm like, I would like to provide players the means to just get through this on repeat playthroughs. But yeah, like I really like stories in games. And I spent a lot of time really thinking about, I mean, I somewhat joke that VisceraFest is like a collaborative project between me as an adult and me as an edgy teenager. And
you really are Zane.
Yeah. And the story is where that manifests the most. Because like Carolyn is objectively the game's villain. Like,
no, come on.
Like it's pretty clear cut. Like when you start the game, I feel that she's the game's villain.
Come on.
But especially by the end of Chapter 2, it's pretty clear she's the game's villain.
We're all one bad day away from accidentally unleashing a demonic lord from another realm. It's it could happen to anyone. Like, don't badmouth my beautiful angry wife, Caroline.
But in the original iteration of VisceraFest's story, she was even worse. Like she was objectively like horrifically wicked, and the game's story was completely tone deaf to that fact. The game was pitching her like she was this like anti-hero, and you were just like, no, this character is just like horrifically evil. like bar none, she is a monster.
Literally.
Like there's I mean literally, but also literally. Like there's a scene toward the end of the game in the original iteration of the game's draft where Chromune, the character who's kind of initially set up as the main antagonist, who's objectively probably he's basically the game's good guy for the most part. There's a scene in the original game in the original iteration of the story where you rip his spine out. And it just came across as so needlessly mean-spirited that you're like, this character kind of sucks.
No, dude, it's awesome.
Like, I was just like... I'm
gonna rip off your head and shit down your neck. And then he does it.
But yeah. That would be so weird if Carolyn did that. Yeah, there's a lot of things I don't think we would actually be able to get away with if we were to just Duke Nukem her or something. the in the current iteration of the story, we took a lot of the idea, or I tried to take a lot of the ideas that I initially set up and was planning to do with how dark the game gets, and actually do something meaningful with them in terms of the game's narrative. Like you kind of see it toward the end of the last level you just played with the cutscene. But like one of the game's like kind of core big themes is that Carolyn is basically just like a selfish monster, and she lives for self-fulfillment at the expense of others. And the story like does take some time, a little bit of time to reflect on that fact and the reality that it's like Carolyn, in pursuing what she wants, while she'll get everything she wants in the short term, is ultimately going to lose everything in the long term.
I actually really like the absurdity of her taking on this contract to buy a wedding ring, and she unleashes like an apocalypse of proportions that are incomprehensible, and she
Yeah.
just
it gets worse.
just fucking she still goes like pedal to the metal, like I need to get that bread.
Yeah. Like it gets worse too. Like you'll find. I mean, yeah, I won't say anything, but yeah. So there's degree to where it was like initially like Carolyn was objectively evil and we treated her like it was a hero, but I reached a point where it was like, this character is so wicked. She does not deserve. Like we need to thematically do something with her, because it's very much, when I was originally writing the story, it was literally just, hey, what do I think would be cool? Like, you know, and I'm like 14, 16 years old or whatever writing this. So, you know, it's just like the most ridiculously edgy nonsense.
You mean objectively cool?
Like, yeah, like, just, yeah, like cool in the Zane Slayer's X way. Yeah. And so whereas now it's more like, it's just like, hey, like, what are some themes we can draw out of the story? What are like let's spend more than 2 seconds rubbing brain cells together and like try to do something interesting with the game's narrative. But in the midst of that, like I said, we're still trying. I recognize what VISCERAFEST is. I still want to provide players the means to like when they're replaying, they can just skip all that stuff if they don't care. And you know, again, it becomes frustrating if you're playing the game for the 30th time. So we want to provide, especially because we do incentivize replaying with like the cheat codes and the unlockable gameplay modifiers and stuff. Which, by the way, there's a gameplay modifier you can get that makes it so every enemy one-shots you. So.
Oh goddamn, the severed steel mode.
But yeah, like in general, we do incentivize replaying the game a lot, and so I'd like to provide players the means to skip all that stuff. But it will kind of be at the mercy of, yeah, how easy it is to go about implementing some of it. Because if it's gonna take like a year to redo the game, then yeah, we're probably not gonna add that. But I would like to provide that for players. Because in general, like I approach everything from the mindset of, if I were a player, what would I want in my game? Like, and whether that comes down to enemies, whether that comes down to like the cheat codes and gameplay modifiers and stuff, like what would I want, like difficulties wise, weapons wise, like just let me answer those questions, because I can't appeal to some nebulous person out there who has some opinion about that game. The only person whose opinion I understand is my own. So how do I provide me with the means by which I can optimally enjoy this game? What would be my dream game, basically? In VISCERAFEST, and I'm trying to make a VISCERAFEST that.
There's no better mindset, I think, when it comes to making a game than, you know, how can I make this my dream game? I need to take like a quick urination break. I'll be right back. You can entertain chat's like abhorrent questions. Well, I'm sure they'll be coming flooding in now.
But yeah. So I'm just a little goblin. That's what it is. A little goblin with a big ego who can't take criticism, according to these theories. Yeah, let's see. I think there are some questions I might have missed. Automatic jump shot, presentation. People find. Yeah. I have, I think it's if Peppermill is still here. I have genuinely seen people complain that like, because what is it? I've genuinely seen people complain about the fact that like VISCERAFEST doesn't have a means for you to just recuperate ammo like Doom Eternal does, which makes it unfair. Oh my goodness! Like I actively joke about it, but I just refer to the Steam forums as Diet 4chan. What do I think of Ultra Kill?
I don't take handouts.
I have mixed feelings about Ultra Kill. It's been a while since I've played it. I know initially one big issue I had is they have their funny little like scoring system where they want theoretically they want to incentivize you to play in a really stylish way, but the problem is that in older versions of Ultra Kill, they didn't provide you with any incentive to actually engage in like score chasing, and because of that, I was just like, I don't care. Like I'll play. Like it frustrated me that it was like the game seems to want me to play stylishly, but it's not actually providing me with incentives to. I've heard they've changed that. But I haven't played it recently, and there's also some story stuff Ultra Kill does that I don't super care for more personal religious reasons. So yeah, like Ultra Kill seems like a cool game, but some of the story stuff rubs me the wrong way. In older versions, some of the design decisions rub me the wrong way. And in general, its community is not great.
Well, you don't like butt plugs?
No, actually I don't.
Come on, dude. VISCERAFEST could be so. It could be the game it never was. Get wrecked. All you had to do was put in the plugin.
Yeah, it's so weird too, Peppermill, because I see people like. They'll say, like, you see lots of people who are like, I want something original, I want something unique. And then it's like, they'll play something that's originally unique and they'll, like, recoil in horror and be like, why isn't it like this other game I like? But yeah, since it's kind of the... Yeah, polar opposite. I'm wondering what you would mean by it's the polar opposite of mine in terms of like resource management and stuff. Because I don't really. I mean, like personally speaking, I do wish Ultra Kill had some level of resource management, but I also understand that it does go a little bit against what they're trying to do with that game. I have to ask, have you tried Beyond Citadel or
Citadel / Beyond Citadel? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little too horny for me. I don't really. I'm debating how much I want to get into like a personal discussion about something like that.
See as much as you feel comfortable with saying.
Yeah, screw it. I've had a porn addiction since I was 11, and I genuinely loathe pornography. Like I would like if there's anything I would smite off the face of the earth, I would smite pornography off the face of the earth. And as such, whenever I see something that like veers into the territory of like baiting on those terms, like it genuinely grosses me out. And I just like, look, like this is something I've struggled with. This is an aspect of myself that I hate and I loathe, and I wish I could just burn away from myself. Like there's nothing in my life that I feel more miserable about than being addicted to this garbage. And so anytime I see something like that, it really hurt. It just, I'm like, I can't do this. Like I can't engage with that. Like it just puts me in this place where I'm just like, no, like I can't do that. But yeah. Is there kind of yeah. There's no resource management in Blast. Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind that Ultra Kill. Like, I personally would prefer Ultra Kill having resource management to some extent, just because, for me personally, like, the resource management aspect of retro shooters is so compelling to me, and it is so fun. But I also understand that Ultra Kill is really more about like providing players with the freedom to play as creatively as they want. I just think they needed with the older versions of that I played. Again, they've made changes to it since, and I haven't experienced those changes. So it's maybe it's the case that that's fixed now. But in the versions I play, there was no incentive to actually play creatively. And so if they've now provided the incentives where it's like, oh yeah, you want to do weapon combos and stuff like that, then great. Like, I think that's awesome. But in the older versions I played, it was like you could basically play through the entire game with the pistol, and who cares?
So I'm guessing you don't feel particularly fondly about video games that sort of incentivize the player to like I hate to use the term make their own fun, but sort of like they're the ones who are going to find a way they find fun to play, as opposed to having your game, which is, you know, it kind of forces you to play in a fun way. Otherwise, you die. You just don't win the encounter.
It depends on the game, because I think there are games that can do that well and games that do that poorly. It all comes down to, like I said, every game is going to have an optimal way to play it. The question is, did the devs create the optimal way to play, or did they kind of just balance the game and allow the game's relatively loose balancing decisions that weren't really... Because the problem you face with a lot of games is they're balanced, quote unquote, but they're not balanced around an ethos. And because of that, the balancing has no point. And because the balancing has no point, players will optimize the fun out of the experience by finding the ways the developer didn't account for the means by which the game was balanced. And so I think you can have games where like you have like a lot of creative freedom. Like one of my favorite games is Cultic. And Cultic really allows you to define the terms of engagement. Like if you want to, you can play Cultic like a run and gun shooter. If you want to, you can hang back and just kind of pot shot enemies from a distance. Both options are viable. But it feels like the developer, to some extent, accounted for both possibilities within the play space and balanced the game around both possibilities. And as a result, it doesn't feel like you're optimizing the fun out of the experience. It feels like you have incentives to tackle it kind of however you choose. And I think it works in that context, but I don't think it works there in a game like Doom 2016, for example, where it's like, like you can approach the game, like you quote unquote can approach the game however you want, focusing on whatever weapons you want, but in reality, what you will typically end up doing is, and like people joke about it with the super shotgun, but Doom 2016 has this problem with every weapon where if you fully upgrade any one single weapon in Doom 2016, that weapon becomes absolutely broken. Like the rocket launcher, for example. You have the remote detonate option on the rocket launcher, and when you fully upgrade it, you can remote detonate the rocket in the air, and the rocket will keep traveling and then explode on impact as well. Which means you can basically get 2 rockets worth of damage out of a single rocket. Which is kind of broken. And because of that, again, it allows you to optimize the fun out of the experience, take a single weapon, and use it to absolutely break the game. And moreover, Doom 2016 just doesn't, the late game does not feel like it was balanced around how powerful you can become, which really hurts Doom 2016. Doom 2016 has like this odd reverse difficulty curve where like the early game, like the hardest enemies in the games are the imps, and everything else is kind of a joke by comparison. And so the early game is really difficult while you don't have a lot of weapons and you're mostly just fighting imps. And the late game is ridiculously easy because you're fighting a lot of other enemies with like the fully kitted out arsenal. And also probably a few weapons that you fully upgraded and are now completely broken. Right, so that's an example of a game where I'm like, I don't think their route of trying to allow the players to express themselves in however means they feel I don't think it worked in that context, but I think there are games where it does work.
I think the expression has to be like meaningful. If it's all
Yeah.
flourish and if it's all like entirely self-imposed, then you're essentially as a player trying to make up for bad developer decisions and bad balancing by
Yeah.
choosing to like disregard a lot of stuff on purpose.
Exactly. Like it's like you're like I joke, but you're literally like I call it. I say it somewhat jokingly, but you're literally having to role play
Yeah.
in these games in order to have fun with them. Is what it is.
Oh, exactly.
Like you're having to pretend to make the game fun. Like I'm pretending that I have to manage my resources. I'm pretending that I have to use these weapons, but I really don't.
I mean,
and it's just
yeah,
not-
that's. I used the same word for Dark Tide. It's driving me crazy, but Dark Tide is so badly balanced that if you want to have challenge, it's like, okay, I can't use this ability, I can't use all of these weapons because they're so poorly balanced that they completely take all the gameplay out of the game, and it's all like you're playing pretend. You're just playing pretend with the game, and it's not a fun feeling at all.
Yeah, absolutely. It frustrates me because I'm like, there's a quote I remember. I think it was the director of the movie. I think it was a quote of the movie. What's the movie called? I think it's Old Boy, where the director said something to the extent of like, if I wanted to do something mindless, I would just take a bath. Like, why would I want a movie that doesn't ask me to think? Right? And I have the same mentality with games where I'm just like, if I wanted to do something mindless, the most fun mindless thing I could do is take a nap. You know? Like, just go to bed. Like, that's mindless, and it's pretty fun to sleep. But, like, you know, when I'm going through life, it's so much more compelling and enjoyable to have things to overcome. And so when I'm playing a game, I want a game that asks something of me, that asks me to overcome a problem, and to have enjoyable means available to me to overcome that problem. But stems from the problem that all of gaming has. Gamers got too good compared to people who would be... Yeah, that's also a problem, because it's a bit of a headache dealing with players who are completely new to the video game space. Because obviously you don't want to completely alienate new players. Like, there are some players who, like, I mean, you know, like, reaching where I am at now, as far as playing games goes, like, it took a while, right? And so you do kind of need to also keep in mind that there are players who none of even remotely playing a game is going to be intuitive to them. So I do think it's important that you have both kinds of experiences, where you have the kind of experiences that are easy and people can kind of just come in and like I really appreciate, like, I think Dusk, for example, like Dusk is really easy, but I think Dusk is a great way to introduce somebody to the first-person shooter genre, right? Because it does still Dusk still asks you, like, there's still weapons that are optimal to use against certain enemies. It still has, like, those layers of strategy that I love from the retro shooter genre, but it's also really approachable for new players. And so I think it's important to have games that cater to people who know a genre and love it, and also people who are just entirely new to an experience. I think it does a disservice when you don't have both games available, both kinds of games available to people, because then you're alienating an entire group of people who, over the course of time, might really enjoy something like VISCERAFEST. So I do appreciate games like Dusk. I do appreciate games that don't grind your soul into dust because you're not playing them the right way. But there's also a degree to where I'm like, but I don't super want to play those games.
Sometimes getting your soul ground to dust can be pretty fun, actually.
Yeah. I mean, hey, that's why I made VISCERAFEST.
I wouldn't even say
this whole series
VISCERAFEST
really
is like
sucks.
it doesn't really like brutalize you. It's never unfair. And I think that's a very
Yeah.
important thing when it comes to game difficulty is that there has been a section of VISCERAFEST where I didn't feel like a positive emotion beating. Like when sometimes you play a game and there's just like a really badly designed part and it's difficult in like a really frustrating way, where
Yeah.
it's not sort of pressuring you to like use your tools in the best way you can and be creative and be smart. It's just it's fucking glorp shit for 30 minutes and then you don't feel satisfaction. You feel relief that it's over. You know, I don't know if you've
Yeah.
played have you played Ninja Gaiden 2?
What I was gonna say really quick was
Yeah?
I
Sorry.
said that somewhat sarcastically. Like ViscerFest has the reputation of a game that will grind your soul into dust. I don't think it literally will, because I do think everything is hyper tuned to the point where, yeah, like if you know what you're doing, you can get through ViscerFest just fine. But for a lot of people, that is still going to be grinding their soul into dust. And so I said it somewhat sarcastically, but to get to your question, I've never played a Ninja Gaiden game,
Hmm.
Ninja Gaiden game in general.
It's just that 2 is
Uh,
like it's a great example of a game that both has like excellently crafted combat encounters that really make you like sweat your ass off to get through them. And then it also has just parts that are terrible. Just like a completely uneven experience, like stuff that was completely undesigned, unfinished, and the most bafflingly stupid shit imaginable. And it's nice to have a game where you just don't have outside of the pushing a block section, you don't have gameplay parts where you feel like you're wasting your time or you're just nothing's being asked of you in a meaningful way, and it's just just frustrating for the sake of being frustrating as opposed to always feeling like you're working towards a solution. I think is
yeah,
probably the
that is
best way I
one
can put
thing
it.
where, if I could, I think it would be more compelling. I mean, maybe this would piss you off more. I don't know, but I do think it would be more compelling if there was a certain extent to where the puzzles had an element where on replays it's not just like going through the motions to resolve the answer, because that is one issue with like replaying puzzle sections like that is they're at least for me they're compelling on a first time playthrough, and then it's like on replays there is a little bit of you're just going through the motions, and I don't mind that, but it would be more fun if it's like, but a part of what makes puzzles compelling is the travel to find the answer. Which again, maybe that would piss you off more. But having some kind of puzzle that would, I think, provide that to a certain extent would be an interesting thing to try and come up with.
I think as long
Where
as
it's
I have
like-
the option to just skip it, I'm happy whatever you do. Whatever you puzzle enjoyers do.
Yeah. Yeah. To be fair, I think this isn't the case in every. I mean, it's certainly not the case in most levels, but there is the final level of the game does contain like a puzzle section that you can just skip. And so maybe it would be fun to like provide like players where it's like, here's like the main route that's like pretty clear cut. And actually, this is something I really wanted to do with ViscerAFest that because of time we just didn't have the time to do. I really wanted to have like levels that provided you with multiple routes through them, but the alternate routes were all secrets, right? So it's like, hey, here's like a secret route you can play through this level, and it's like, here's like an entirely secret combat encounter or an entirely secret like part of this level that you won't see if you don't secret hunt. Like, I really wanted to do stuff like that, and we just didn't have the time to do it. Because to me, it's like, it's so much fun to go through like games on repeat playthroughs and just be like, oh, like I found this like entirely like secret combat encounter that like I never saw on my first playthrough, and now I can like go through and like I basically have an entirely new part of the game to experience. I really wanted to do stuff like that. We didn't have the time.
It's funny you say that because I feel like there is some of that mentality that still made it through the final game where you have I think you might be the only shooter that uses like regular key cards as like secrets. Like sometimes you just find like a green key card and it's only there to access like a secret area, and the secrets can be like very elaborate, and they, it's yeah, that's funny you said that.
Yeah, but like, so for example, in the level C2L4, which so C2L4 has, in the opening area, you can find this little like hut, And inside that hut, there was supposed to be an elevator, and that elevator would connect down to this entire series of cave systems, which would run below the map, and you'd be able to get to the USC facility that has like the Shambler boss fight in it. You'd be able to get there like just through this entirely alternate route through the level if you wanted to. But because of time, we had to cut all that.
That's a very interesting take on like the
because-
mega secret type stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I really wanted to do stuff like that because I was like, that would be so much fun. And yeah, it's just, again, time. So, tapping into our publisher situation a little bit without talking about too much that I can't legally speaking. When we initially signed on to work with our publisher, they asked us to make a schedule for the game's development. And around the time, we really didn't want to because we had no reference for how long anything we were doing was going to take. Because this is my first game. Like, I've never made a game before VisceraFest. And moreover, my lead programmer, Elijah Allen, I don't think he had ever worked on a game to this scale either. Like, so for both of us, this was basically our first game, and it was our first game working together as well, which that self introduces a lot of hernias to come out to overcome. And this is, of course, ignoring the fact that life was constantly intervening throughout VisceraFest development. Like, during VisceraFest development, I got engaged. The woman I was with broke up with me. My grandmother ended up passing away. We had a composer leave the project mid-development. My motherboard died, and I ended up having to wait like 2 weeks to get another motherboard. Like, it was basically, it felt like at a certain point in development, like everything that could go wrong was going wrong, and making development take as long as possible. And so that combined with, yeah, just like the scheduling of the game's development, kind of just meant that, like, I mean, the game was, like, to give you context, the initial schedule we made with our publisher, the game was supposed to come out like the end of 2022, early 2023. And it just came out in April. And again, that's a combination of, realistically, we didn't know how long the game was going to take to make, and so we couldn't take a hard stance on anything scheduling wise. We were kind of just trying to make our publisher happy with the schedule that we made, which I think caused us to underschedule or to underestimate how long the schedule should be. And that, combined with just everything that happened throughout development, constantly intervening, meant that, yeah, like, the game just took way longer than it was supposed to come out. Like, my lead programmer, because of how many delays we had, my lead programmer ended up having to get a full-time job elsewhere. And this led to a season of development where for 5 months, Elijah wasn't able to work on the game at all. So development basically completely stopped on the game for 5 months. Like, I was still working on the game, but I couldn't make any forward progress on development. So what I ended up doing is I actually went through and I started just completely remaking the first and second chapter of VisceraFest. Kind of taking in a lot of feedback we were getting, making fixes and changes to the levels, and like the level, like if you go and you compare what VisceraFest looks like now to the older, actually, let me send you that. I think I released a video comparing some of the different iterations of VisceraFest throughout the years. So I'm gonna send that to you real quick so you can take a look. But you can see like just how much the game changed from its early access version to the full release version. Let me find that video really quick. So this video I'm about to send you is basically an evolution of one particular level over the course of, I think it's almost 9 years. So I'll send that. Nope, that is the wrong video. Why did you send that? Hold on. Oh, come on. My computer's fighting with me right now. There we go. Alrighty.
I know that feeling.
So yeah, you can see this is, yeah. So this is, I think this level existed in the 2016 Blender version of the game,
Oh, I think I know which one
and
this is in the
yeah,
final game. This is the one with like the little,
yeah, yeah,
the things you can toggle, and there's like a little janitor here on the left.
yeah. So this is the Blender version of the level you're looking at right now. This was so fun fact about this level actually. This was the very first level I ever made for any game ever. And this is only the first like seventh of what the level was originally supposed to be. I very early on realized that Blender's game engine was an unoptimized piece of garbage, and I was only able to ever have 20 enemies in a level at a time. And so I was like, well, I really have to be careful about what I do with levels now because that really limits my capacity for how long I can make levels. Like, and so when I say 20 enemies at a time, that's like in total, including enemy spawners, by the way. So in the Blender version of VisceraFest, the levels were really short, which is why that level is so short. So this initial iteration was the very first level I made. That ending elevator in the current version was originally supposed to open up to like the rest of the level. And I'm going to tell you right now, because this was my very first level, the rest of this level was absolute garbage. And it's kind of really good actually that the Blender was an unoptimized piece of garbage because it really forced me to like very carefully consider how I design levels. And it really pushed me to be like, I really have to very carefully consider like how I utilize space. So this is the early access version of the level now. To really, really carefully consider how I utilize space, how I take advantage of rooms, like how I pace things out, where I use enemies and where I don't use enemies. Like the fact that I was so limited was kind of a blessing in disguise because it forced me to learn how to not terribly design maps. But yeah.
I noticed that the music in Caroline have pretty much been the same since the Blender version.
Yeah, I think Jana Polzin, who's
Caroline,
Caroline's
sorry.
voice actor, has been with the project since. Yeah, Jana Polzin, who's Caroline's voice actor, has been with the project since like 2017, I want to say. Which is insane. Like, just remembering how long the game has been in development at times, like, it feels like the game. I mean, like, I literally like this game has literally been in development for half of my lifetime, which is insane to think about. And it literally feels to me like the game has been in development throughout the course of like multiple lifetimes. Because there was like I started working on this before I started working on this before I was dating my fiance. I was working on this through the season where I was dating her. She broke up with me. So now I'm like in the post I have a relationship with someone timeline, it feels like. And yeah, it's just it's difficult to comprehend for myself, like just how much of my life has been subsumed working on this stupid game.
It's a pretty smart, stupid game. I've played dumber.
Yeah. I say stupid game like more in a like facetious
Damning
way,
it,
like,
yeah.
like
That
just,
damn game.
like like that stupid woman. What has she done to my life? But yeah, yeah, it's just it's insane. Like, yeah, like there's so much I could talk about with the game's development because yeah, I mean it was in development for 13 years. So many of these indie retro shooters could easily fall into. Yeah. I feel like the person making it is trying to spike. Yeah.
Bring it on.
There's another kind of indie shooter that's been in early access forever that I'm kind of keeping an eye on and off, which is Get to the Orange Door. And I think that's also been in development
goodness.
for like half the devs' lifespan.
That game has like shifted genres like 20 times.
She shifted genres, shifted
Like-
art directions. He redid the movement a bunch of
know,
times. Yeah.
I just like I remember like when G-Man Lives covered that game in like 2015, and it was like a more I don't even know remember what kind of genre it was. It was a first-person shooter, but like it was just a completely different kind of game, and now it's like some kind of weird roguelite thing. And yeah, I'm just like attempting to play that game now feels like attempting to play Warframe, where it's like if you've not been following Warframe obsessively throughout the course of your development, it's just like what is even going on with this game anymore?
Yeah, it feels like every time I check up on it, it's completely transformed. But
Yeah,
I will play it when it comes out.
Yeah. Speaking of which, one of the post-launch things we're going to be doing is we will be adding unlockable bonus levels.
Cool.
So there will be more levels, and Elijah might gaslight me. I wanted to make it a free update to the game, but depending on how things go, I might make a bonus episode for VisceraFest of some description. And if I'm trying to think. I might make I'd like to make a bonus episode for VisceraFest of some description, and I wanted to make it a free update, but because Elijah wants to make money on this game, that's probably not going to make any money. It might be. It will probably just end up being like a free, like a $5 like expansion or something, like a expand-alone that you can get. But if we do that, I will want to add a lot more levels to it to justify charging money for it. So there will probably be more VisceraFest to play, beyond just like the unlockable post-game stuff.
That's great to hear. I haven't finished it, and I want to play more VisceraFest. I want there to be more VisceraFest in the world, honestly.
Yeah. As far as like levels go, like a level editor goes, I don't know that we'll add something like that, but I mean, a lot of that's going to be in Elijah's ballpark, my programmer. The issue is like adding modding tools is a nightmare to any game, and it takes so much time. And my biggest concern would be because of the time investment it's going to take to make. By the time it actually is done and comes out, I think most people will have moved on from VisceraFest. So I just don't think there would be any community to actually mod it by the time we have the tools ready. And in that time frame, I'm like, if I were to continue working on anything, I would rather almost just make another game at that point, or make more VisceraFest content myself, because at least at that point, it's like we could drum up more interest in like another release or something like that. But yeah, I'd love to have modding support. I just don't think it's viable, unfortunately. And yeah, but yeah, we have a lot of stuff. I mean, again, I'm very much of the opinion I want to do for my game what I would want someone to do for their game, right? Like, I want to make the game my dream game and provide the kind of post-launch support I would want to see provided to a game that I really love. And so I want to provide people with, like, the people who love VisceraFest, I want to give them more VisceraFest that they can play through and more VisceraFest that they can enjoy, and do interesting, fun stuff for them. So hopefully I can make that happen.
I'm buying 15 copies as we speak. Bankrolling this entire operation. Yeah, I don't know. It's the thing you said about like a big YouTuber having pull and is, you know, for especially a smaller game, I totally understand how that can be kind of scary. But I think you have the right mentality by just making the game you want and making that vision as good as possible. And you know, if some people want to shit up like the Steam reviews, that's very unfortunate. But if you're not letting it affect the game, I think that's what matters the most.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, I know I've been talking, like, Civi is a pretty cool guy, and I know he really loves the game, and he's doing a video on it right now. So I am very hopeful that that will give us a big boost. Because, like, folks like G-Man Lives and Civi, because of how much sway they have, can kind of dictate whether or not a small indie game takes off. So I'm really hoping that that when Civi covers the game, like it'll give us a big boost. Because I'll be honest, I don't think we're doing amazing right now as far as sale goes. But I think that yeah, if Civi covers the game, like that'll help us out a lot.
Yeah, it's a vicious arena making indie games and hoping you get noticed and you play the social media game well enough to get enough traction.
Yeah, I'm also trying to think of ways that like I could get the word out more. The problem is obviously I'm kind of a nobody, and as such I don't really have much like influence or pull. So it's kind of trying to figure out like what are strategic ways I could go about like getting the word out for the game.
How to go viral on Twitter.
Yeah, one thing I am trying to do is I'm kind of putting together like a pro tips for VisceraFest, like little shorts, YouTube short series. And in addition to that, that'll be posting like our Steam forums for people who suck at the game. But just kind of like as a means to help new players who aren't picking up what VisceraFest is putting down. Because I do think there is a sense in which there's a degree to where we explain a lot about VisceraFest, but we don't obnoxiously hold your hand. And I think that because of that, people maybe misinterpret how you're supposed to approach the game. And there are a lot of people who are alienated just because they don't get it. And I want to provide as much as I can to prevent that from happening without just literally being like, and you use this gun to shoot this enemy, and you'll have less of a hard time.
Yeah, I think thankfully you've made a good game. So if you did these little like pro tips, it would also be an opportunity to like showcase cool gameplay, because efficient gameplay is cool gameplay in VisceraFest, and to kind of open people's eyes who maybe the game didn't click with them to realize the just how much cool shit you can do in the game.
Yeah, because I mean, I've joked like there are a lot of people who joke about how hard the game is and cruel the game is, but for me personally, like it's never about actually making the game hard. It's just about creating it's like I said earlier, it's about creating a game where the best way to play is the most fun way to play. And that kind of means that you have to create reasons for the player to play VisceraFest like we ask you to play it. And that means making the game hard to punish people for playing it wrong.
One thing I would like, in terms of handholding, I would like a sort of training arena where you sort of show like enemy stats and explain the attack that they do. Because I was very confused as to how the turret guy who turns into an orb when he dies. I'm sorry, I don't know any names. I was confused as to how is this guy? How did he move? Yeah. How did he teleport there? And I kept trying to dodge the projectile as if it was an actual attack. In general, I just really like training modes where you can just kind of observe enemies and watch them do their thing.
Yeah, the headache now is because we have localization to take in mind. It's kind of difficult to add more text to the game because it all would have to get translated, and that costs money. So I'd love to do something like that, but I get the feeling if I want to, I'd probably have to do it outside the game in some means. Because yeah, like the unfortunate reality I think is if we add too much text to the game, that like for example, like we have like the library and the bestiary in the hub, and we actually had to cut a lot of text from the bestiary and the library because our publisher underestimated how much text the game would have and didn't budget accordingly. For the translations. So what I could probably do is do like a video series where it's like, hey, this is this enemy, here's like some tips and tricks on how to like deal with this enemy type.
That would be great.
But like stuff like that I would probably have to do outside the game.
I think that's fine too, but it also lets you showcase like cool enemies, like interesting behaviors. It would be nice.
Yeah. That and the other thing is, it might also be a means by which I can help people deal with enemies that they hate. Because a lot of people, like, I was kind of shocked. Like, I knew people probably would have mixed feelings on them. I was kind of shocked how many players hate the assassins in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Like, people loathe the assassins. And I'm kind of trying to find ways to make them less obnoxious without nerfing.
I really like the assassin. Thought they were very clever.
Like they were. I love them. I think they're a great enemy type. They're so much
Over
fun,
here.
in my opinion.
When I discovered accidentally
Yeah.
that their hologram explodes on you, dude, that was awesome. That was hilarious. The decoy. When the first time the decoy got me, I was just looking at it, and it blew up in my face. It was awesome. It was great.
I do want to add a little beep that plays when they turn red. So that way, like, there's a little bit of an audio cue warning. So if you're not looking at them, you're like, oh, it's about to explode. But yeah.
I don't think there's a single enemy in your game I like hate. I'm trying to think actually. Who did I hate? Who did I rage on? Who did I call Glorp? I guess the guy who chases you in the horror sections, that just because I didn't find those very fun. But I don't think that counts. Yeah, it stops you from running on autopilot and plays with the rules. Yeah, no, the assassin's great.
Yeah, the Watchers. The little horror sequences. So that enemy type is called the Watchers. Yeah, that's more so. Yeah, those levels in general, like, yeah. So one thing we kind of knew is like, I think older versions of VISCERAFEST were a little bit more. So VISCERAFEST now is a lot more. It's harder, but it's also more forgiving than it used to be. Older versions of VISCERAFEST were, I'd say, much more cruel, and because of that, the game was very exhausting to play. And as such, we kind of knew, like, we need levels that just give the player a moment to breathe. And a lot of players actually end up appreciating that, because they're, like, a lot of players, like, once they get through, like, the first 5 levels of Chapter 1, like, a lot of players are just exhausted and wiped. And that used to be even worse in older versions of the game. So a lot of people really appreciated, like, the change of pace in those levels. Which tells me they were a good decision overall. Yeah, it was very much a case of, like, we knew that we can't just have the game be constantly relentless, and we kind of need to give players, again, moments to breathe, as a means of respite from just how intense the game can be. Because, again, like, obviously, for me, the game's not that difficult and not that intense. But for the average player, it's really demanding. And like you know, like, everybody's like, this is like a sweat lord game. And so you kind of, there's a degree to where it's like, obviously I'm not necessarily making the game for, like, casual players, but I do still need to keep them in mind to a certain extent and make decisions that won't completely alienate them. So
yeah,
I still
you've
really
alienated
like,
me. I'm refunding the game. It's over. Get wrecked.
Yeah, I really, for me personally, like, there is something fun about just, like, blitzing through those levels. Like, just having a level that's like how quickly can I get through this? Like C1L6, like the very first level we had, where we take you to the Great Divide. But yeah, well, like I said, we are adding a new game to Martic. We are adding a new game plus mode, which will rebalance the entire campaign with late game enemies and late game weapons, right? So you'll be seeing, like, I don't know, like, obviously we haven't started balancing it yet, so I don't know what it's going to look like in total, but, like, you know, it'll be things like you see, like, a mecha scientist in the tutorial level.
Those were so awesome. The first time I saw the little scientist dude eject out.
Yeah, no, they're the scientists became, like, they were kind of a spur of the moment idea, because I was like, well, I don't want to just add. Originally, we didn't have, like, those part pickups in levels at all. It was just you get enemies for health from enemies, and so I was like, well, I don't want to just add traditional health pickups everywhere, and we've got to do something special. And I was like, oh, we'll just add, like, NPCs that you can kill to get health from. But a lot of people ended up liking him so much, I'd be like, it'd be really funny if we added an enemy type that was just like one of those NPCs kind of getting their revenge on you. And yeah, so that's kind of how we came up with the mecha scientists.
They're great. I love that the ambient health bags are just like a big heart lying around.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of I try to make sure that those are exclusively like kind of like the mega health tier pickups you get in like Duke Nukem 3D or the fortune cookies in Shadow Warrior, where it's like, hey, here's like a special secret, like you get 50 health from this or something like that. I never wanted to do the thing where it's like, hey, we just strew about a bunch of health pickups throughout the level, because I felt like doing that would make it feel too much like every other retro shooter.
And if you make a
in terms
difficult
of how
game,
do it.
you would like incentivize like, oh shit, the last health pack was 5 minutes ago, and I'm just gonna backtrack 5 minutes to get that 20 health because the game's really rough and I need all the resources I can. Yeah, good call, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, so actually, I'm trying to think. There was something they were direct. Oh, so the idea for the scientist actually came from how in Rise of the Triad, when an enemy's like close to death, sometimes they'll like fake their own death, or they'll like beg for mercy. And it's like it'd be really funny like if we had like an enemy that had like some really bad voice acting that was like begging for their lives, basically. Um, and
It's
so I think that's how we
hilarious
came up with. Yeah.
that you mentioned that because
Uh,
I mentioned the exact same Razzstar thing, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if like the little scientist that ejects actually fake surrendering, and then if you turn around, he like pulls out like a ridiculously tiny pistol and just starts shooting you.
that would have been funny if we did
Die,
that.
die.
We did add yeah, I mean there's an obnoxious amount of references in VisceraFest.
It's
Like
not too bad. No,
because I
I've
mean
played worse, trust me.
yeah, I mean like if you're paying attention, you'll kind of realize there are references everywhere. Um oh, speaking of which, I see you have your glorp there. Let me go
Yeah,
get my glorp.
I
I
heard
can
it meow fiercely about an hour ago.
Yeah, let me go get my little guy, because I have two little guys, but there's one in particular.
Awesome.
Where is he?
Mine is also particular. You're very particular, Grob, you know that? Glob to glob communication. He's a good beast. He's a
I
good
need
animal.
to, I need to show you my boy. You can in fact find this creature in VisceraFest.
Awesome.
Hold on, my webcam is not
Hold on,
set
dude.
up right.
I need to
All right, here
like.
we go. There we go. Alrighty. So
Beast!
this guy right here. This is Smudgy Boy.
Look, Glorb, it's a creature like you.
Yeah. I actually get told he looks like me a lot. But yeah,
Look at that.
this is Smudge.
International grobbing right now. Phenomenal.
He,
Monumental occasion.
yeah, he's a national treasure. Everybody loves Smudge. He is we everybody constantly jokes that he is the developer of Viscera Fest.
At least he's
And
the
so there's an
mastermind.
yeah. And so there's an achievement I think in Viscera Fest where if you find the secret level, and you beat it, you'll find Smudge in the game, and you'll get an achievement called Meet the Developer. But yeah, our secret level is for all the Doom fans out there. It's called Nuts.blend. Um, so I'll let you guess what that means.
Goodbye, animal. Oh my god. There's been an exchange.
But indeed. But yeah, I kind of I pretty closely track how many copies of Viscera Fest is Taylor. I pretty closely track whether or not people are talking about or covering the game. Like I literally just I had a friend by the name of Jared the Bear who was who was playing the game earlier today, and he had to like leave an emergency stream. But I'm usually like checking Twitter and just checking online places, see like, hey, are people posting about talking about the game? Because I like to show up to like people's streams and YouTube videos and stuff like that. Because if people are going to support me, I want to support them too. So
That's epic.
yeah.
I love having devs in my chat. I had the Speed Freaks devs also show up when I was playing that, and that was really cool. It's always neat.
Yeah.
Getting
No, it is
getting
fun.
to humiliate myself live in front of the man who created the thing I'm playing is always kind of insanely cool.
Yeah. I mean, look, like you can't be worse than like half the people I watch playing my game. Like I see people play the game on like hard difficulty, and I mean, like I said, I've seen people shoot scientists with the quad shotgun. Like nothing quite hurts my soul as much as watching that happen.
Oh, that's And when you play the game, you just know like how valuable and how fun the Deus Mortis is, and just how sick it is to explode 5 dudes, and then you send the projectile back, and 5 more detonate. It's just, yeah, I would get angry.
Yeah.
I would revoke the license to play the game on Steam. Honestly, I would at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like giving people like tips and tricks, but I generally try not to backseat game too much. So I usually just bite my tongue. But yeah, I've seen so much worse when it comes to people playing my game. Like I have people constantly apologizing to me, like, oh, like I'm so sorry, I'm terrible at your game, and I'm just like, I mean, I have seen the bottom of the barrel. Like once you've seen the bottom of the barrel, once you have seen the bottom of the barrel, you're just like, okay, like anything up from there is fine.
I was also scrambling to like try to oh shit, the dev is here, what do we say? But when I shut up, I played a lot better. Like that big arena fight after, like in chapter 1 was I did it a second time without talking, or when I was fighting oh my god, what's his name, the robot, the ball, the Chromium,
Dr. Mortis.
yeah, Mortis, not Chromium, yeah, it was yeah,
I don't know. I do the same thing. Like for some reason, I mix up Dr. Mortis and Chromium's name, and I'm like, they're not similar, but for some reason, I just like
they
I'll see
occupy the
Chromium,
same
I'm like,
space in your mind, yeah.
exactly. I'm just like, what's going on? Like, why does this happen to me?
Yeah, I finished that fight I think with 4 HP left, and it was just like very genuinely like pulse pounding. It was great.
Yeah, I love that. Like for some reason, some people just hate that fight. I love that fight so much. Like that, like the music combined with the fact that the fight just feels like a duel against like an equal. Like that to me just feels so fun. That yeah, like it to me is like, and in addition to that, when you have the final phase where it feels like he's just going all out, like that it's just so fun.
He's just
I
mechanically interesting too. Like the arena is fun. Like his attacks are fun. The stun barrels, like when you figure out the stun barrel mechanic, it's yeah. I beat the level before the dev nerfed it, before he caved in. If you play VISCERAFEST after today, you didn't beat the game. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think are you talking about like the major nerf we did or the last patch?
No, the last patch where I think you like slightly reduced the time it takes for the stun barrels to respawn. It's pretty minor.
Yeah, so we kind of made it better and worse in some ways. So for starters, we made him faster on the easier difficulty settings because some players were telling us that like he was actually really easy on the lower settings, and so we rebalanced him a little bit. My cats are having a hissy fit over here. Stop that! Knock that off. You keep to yourself. Right. So we made him a little bit harder on the easier difficulties. And what we did was we made the stun barrels more visually apparent so that you could see them easier. Because a lot of people, I think, they blended into the environment.
They're pretty discreet, yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people missed them, so we made them more visually apparent, just completely redesigned them. And then in addition to that, we also made it so they respawn more frequently. But kind of a little bit of a trade-off with that is they're also taller than they used to be now, so it's a little bit easier for him to detonate them himself, which could mean in some scenarios that he screws you over and shoots them before you have a chance to actually utilize them well.
That was actually an interesting thing with the fight, is like trying to get him closer to the barrel without him shooting the barrel without being in range.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. My brain's a little bit fried now, but
Mine's
yeah.
always fried, so you're good company. Don't worry. Nobody will
Okay.
judge you here for having
Yeah.
a demolished cortex.
Yeah. I'm really hoping that I get again, I get the feeling the game's not doing too hot right now. And I think a lot of it's just because the game took too long to come out. Like
Hmm.
we were actually one of the biggest names in the retro shooter space for a while. Uh like after G-Man Lives and Civi covered us, like we were like I was literally doing interviews with Hakata, the lead developer of Ultra Kill. Like like me and him we were like basically kind of considered to be on the same terms basically. Um and the game just took so long to come out that it like left the general public consciousness. So we're kind of fighting a bit of an uphill battle right now where people just forgot the game existed. And of course, we have some people who are still waiting for like the soundtrack to be done before they play it and stuff like that.
I feel targeted by
Um,
that statement.
no, not you. Like we have people who are just like they want to play the game when it's done, and the game is not technically done yet. Yeah, so like, and I get that. Like, I'm not holding anything against anyone for that. I think it's totally reasonable. Like, I wouldn't have released the game yet if it were my decision. Um, but yeah, but I think because of those things, like, we're just in a spot right now where the game's not doing too well. I don't know what our official sales figures are, but just in general, with how slow it's been in the Steam forums and in terms of how many reviews we're getting, my general impression is, we're probably looking at not a ton of sales right now. So my hope is that when Civi covers it, the word gets out a lot more, and we'll start to build that audience base back up. That's my hope. I don't know if that will happen, but it is a little bit discouraging to be like, I worked on this game for 13 years, and we used to be really popular, and now the game comes out and nobody cares. So,
Yeah, I
but
definitely
yeah,
hope that will give you the boost you need. Definitely, it's deserved, man. It's the game is just really awesome, you know.
thank you.
And
But
I
yeah,
don't mean that because you pay me to be nice in the Steam forums under five different alts. It is very genuinely like an impressively made game.
but yeah. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. But yeah, so post launch, our plans right now are we have the big new game plus mode I talked about. We've got 3 unlockable bonus levels for each chapter that we're going to be adding. One for each chapter that is that we're going to be adding. And a lot of those levels are going to be like very explicitly like references to other games is kind of the idea. Like I think the level that you'll unlock for episode 2, it's kind of a mishmash of like a bunch of different blood levels. Um so that's going to be really fun. I'm really looking forward to work cuz I have like an early iteration of that level from like years ago that I made, and I was really happy with how that turned out. So now that like I'm in a place where we're working on an engine where we can do so much more, I'm really excited to like get to redesign that level and kind of do so much more with that idea. Um, I kind of wanted to sneak some more secret levels into the game, but those will probably be added to like the expansion I talked about. Um, I know some people want a horde mode, so we might do that. We'll see. But yeah, in general, like a lot of it's gonna be because I'll be honest, VisceraFest is probably the only game I'm actually going to make. For personal reasons. I'd like to get married. I'd like to have kids, and working in game development, I really don't think like just from a time commitment standpoint and a financial standpoint, I don't think that game development will provide me with the means to live the kind of life I want to live. Like I've kind of been being, I feel like I've been being held hostage by VisceraFest because of my commitments to it, where I'm like, there's so much I want to do as far as like volunteer work. There's so much I want to do as far as like getting married, having kids. I have a heart to adopt kids because in my family especially, and because of the woman I was dating formerly, I've seen like the horrors that like the foster care system has wrecked in people's life, such that I want to contribute and deliver any people I can from that. I There's a lot I want to pursue in life, um, like whether it be serving at my church, serving in my community. I just feel like game development has constantly stifled every step of the way, uh, and so I kind of want I want this to be my magnum opus, so to speak, and from there I will probably move on to kind of taking steps to live the life I actually want to live. Um, but I also again I want to make sure that I leave VisceraFest in a good place, where I'm like, this is something I can point back to and say I was proud to have made, um, and make sure that for the people who enjoy what I make, they've got plenty of it to go through. Um, but yeah, uh, that's kind of where I'm at personally. So a lot of it is going to be dictated by. I don't want to commit to working on VisceraFest for 10 more years, but at the same time, I do want to give people as much as I can. So
So VisceraFest 2 in 13 more years is what you're trying to say.
I honestly don't think. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I would love if I continue to work in game development, it will probably be purely as a hobby. I would love to make another game. If I make another game, it will not be a VisceraFest 2. Uh, VisceraFest's story does technically entail a sequel to a certain extent. Not that like we leave it on a cliffhanger or anything, but uh, the VisceraFest story very much has, shall we say, an end point, and that end point would be in a sequel. Because I'll say VisceraFest 1's story has implications and ramifications that lead into another game if we wanted to pursue that. It's a complete story on its own, but we leave the door kind of like open to say, hey, this is where it would go. My problem is, one, sequel wise, I don't really know how I would build on VisceraFest. Um, like I could add more stuff, but I don't feel like that adding more stuff would do anything meaningful. If I were to make a sequel, it would probably just do stuff that's entirely new. And for me, I'm like, well, at that point, I could just make another game and call it something else, right? Because at that point, like, it's not really VisceraFest anymore if I'm not carrying on the core ideas of what made VisceraFest VisceraFest. Um, Beyond that, I'm trying to think. I don't really think people would like the direction the story takes because it's certainly not a happy direction. And so for me, I'm like, I would rather just make an entirely new intellectual property. I would rather make like for example, I would love to make a spiritual successor to Rise of the Triad because I feel like Rise of the Triad is a game where I'm like Rise of the Triad has a lot of great ideas, but boy howdy the execution is botched to hell and back again. There are a lot of really cool things Rise of the Triad does, and I feel like you could so easily build on Rise of the Triad to make something super compelling. I have not seen anybody do it yet. I have a ton of ideas for what I would do, and I doubt anybody else will ever do them. So I would love to be able to do something like that, where it's like I take Rise of the Triad and I'm just like, I have this direction I want to run with all the ideas Rise of the Triad introduces that I think would make for a super fun, unique, and compelling shooter. But again, I also don't want to, but that would be something I do as a hobby, not something I do as like for the rest of my life. So if I make that game, that might not come out for like 10, 15 years. Like, who knows? Because I'd be working on it in my spare time between trying to start a family, trying to work a full-time job, and yeah.
It's a little disheartening to hear developers, say how because it is an insane toll on your life. It's an insane time commitment, and the reward just isn't there, monetarily. But it's I think everyone just wishes you the best. You seem like a really cool dude. Like whatever endeavors you may take on, I wish you genuinely all the best. It's you've left us something special. If VISCERAFEST is the last we see of you, that's a pretty good first and last game, I gotta say. What's
Thank you.
I'm really curious. Just mentioning like a spiritual successor to. I was not expecting Rise of the Triad to be the next the next word you said. What's one like some ideas you that sort of stuck out with you as Rise of the Triad doing something special?
So there are a couple of things. One, I really like the sort of gimmicky, like you have a special weapon slot
Mm.
that's just rocket launchers, and it's just like a basically an outlet for you to be as creatively goofy with the arsenal as possible. And Rise of the Triad only has like 5 rocket launchers, and it's like this idea is like such a fun, goofy thing you can mess around with. Why would you not take advantage of with that and come up with as many ridiculous weapons as you possibly can? But moreover, I feel like Rise of the Triad doesn't really justify the existence of its rocket launchers. Like
Mm.
most of the enemies you can fight in the game can all be one shot by the rocket launchers you have. There's not like any enemies you need to use again, kind of coming back to the retro shooter thing. Like, there's not a whole lot of incentive in Rise of the Triad to use weapons to counter certain enemy types. Uh, and so I'd love to instill some of that into the game. I'd love to have much more creative weapon types and have a lot more weapon types. Maybe like some weapons you can only find in secrets, where it's like, oh, you get like I'm just spitballing something stupid off the top of my head, but maybe it's like you get a yarn ball gun that like you can tie enemies up with, and like you can tie enemies together with the yarn ball gun, and they all kind of like bunch together and get squished or something. Like I don't know, like just I'm just spitballing like off the top of my brain, but it's like there are so many like creative ideas that like what Rise of the Triad does that I think could be really compellingly taken advantage of, and and beyond that, there are a lot of kind of just weird design decisions that Rise of the Triad makes that I think are counterintuitive and don't work in its favor. Like every enemy in Rise of the Triad is kind of the same because it's basically, hey, here's a hit scanner and he can do something silly.
Like to steal your
You
gun.
know? Yeah, like he can steal your
You
gun.
should use it. You
It's
should
like
fire your rocket
okay.
launcher at
Uh,
you. Yeah.
I yeah, and so yeah, just stuff like that where it's like let's like introduce more enemy variety where it's like hey there are actually like meaningful differences in the combat space that like differentiate the enemy types. Introduce like so like for example one idea I had is they have like the infinite ammo pistol which you can then dual wield, which you can then get the MP40, which is like you have all 3 of these weapons, but all 3 of these weapons are basically just like an upgraded version of the one that came before.
Mm.
Why not like introduce actual incentives and reasons where it's like, yeah, they have infinite ammo as in comparison to your your rocket launcher types or your special weapon types, but there's actual incentive to use them against certain enemy types. Like introduce a simple armor system where it's like this enemy or this starting weapon that has infinite ammo, it pierces through armor. This other weapon doesn't. So you have a reason to use this weapon against this enemy as opposed to this enemy. Just simple stuff like that to spruce up the combat a bit and not make it just mindlessly blasting with the MP40 the entire time. Um, Again, just like I have like a layer of simple improvements I would make, like common sense simple improvements I would make, and then like just stuff where it's like, here's a really cool, interesting idea that Rise of the Triad introduces, like the rocket launcher slot or power downs or something like that. Now let's take that further. Like, what can we do with this idea?
And I've not really seen any other retro shooters like basically try to be a spiritual successor to Rise of the Triad. So it's like, what's basically saying what's the logical progression of these ideas, and just let's take them further, like I did with Viscera Fest. Viscera Fest is what's a retro shooter? What are the interesting ideas that retro shooters have? Let's take those ideas further. And now doing that with Rise of the Triad, basically.
That would be awesome. It's true. Rod is completely unique. Like having this sort of rotating slot that isn't just one weapon, but it's just like a slot dedicated for an archetype that's extremely broad. That is a really cool idea. It's been a hot minute since I played it. I just remember, yeah, like the pistols being worthless and a lot of the levels being a bit of kind of head scratchers sometimes.
Yeah, so it's like, uh, yeah, I just like it's one of those games where it's like I play it and I really like Rise of the Triad. Like I can acknowledge it has problems, but I still really enjoy it. But like it's one of those games that like inspires me where I'm just like, this game gives me so many ideas for what I could do to improve upon it.
Mm.
And I'd love to be able to make that game. Uh, and so it's like if I were to make another game, it would probably be something in that vein of like, yeah, like here's Rise of the Triad. What can I do to build upon it? What can I do to improve it? Because like they did the Rise of the Triad like reboot or whatever years ago, and ignoring the fact that it's jank, it kind of still has all of Rise of the Triad's problems. Like they didn't really fix anything, which is weird. It's like they had all of Rise of the Triad's problems, and then they introduced more problems on top of that, which to me is just bizarre. Because I'm like, again, this is an idea that just creatively fuels me to do something interesting. But yeah,
Yeah, I think we can chalk that up to being, like basically, like just a weird jank project by, I think the dev team was just like very very young, very inexperienced. They were originally working on like
the
an
Duke
Unreal
remake.
remaster of Duke 3D, yeah, and that
Yeah,
got shut down, and then they started doing this international team working on Rise of the Triad. Actually, it was one of the first retro shooters that I kind of like paid attention. You can probably still find posts I made in like 2011, I think, with talking to like Dave Oshry, who nobody knew at the time. I don't think he was as
yeah,
big as he is now in the Steam forums.
yeah. I remember early on, like everybody was like asking, like, "Are you guys gonna get published by New Blood? Are you guys gonna get published by New Blood? Like, you should really get published by New Blood." Mhm. Yeah, usually, my impression is that typically what happens is that it's more developers approach a publisher. Like basically, you put a big pitch together, and you approach a publisher, and you say like, "Hey, I'm pitching my game," and they'll be like, we don't like it," or change this, this, and this, and if you change this, this, and this, they'll pick it up. Because one thing that a lot of publishers are usually thinking about when they pick up games is they're thinking about the marketability of a game, and so they're kind of always trying to optimize your game for a particular audience. And so what will usually happen is you'll make a game pitch, you'll pitch the game, and they'll ask you to make adjustments so that it caters to a particular audience more. So yeah. I got my cat teddy bear over here.
We can all see the beast.
Oh yeah. This is no beast, young man. This is an
Creature.
angel. This is a saint. He is the most loving cat I have ever seen. And you can kind of already tell because he always like immediately like touch my head, please. Um, but this cat right here, he is constantly he acts like I have never touched him in my entire life, and being touched is all he's ever wanted. Like he will sit here and I'll pet him for hours. I mean, he's already like about to fall off my desk because I'm scratching his ear. And he'll just drool and he will like yeah, like he yeah, like I said, he acts like he has never been touched in his entire life. It is all he has ever wanted, and it is exactly as perfect as he is imagining it would have been.
That sounds like
Uh,
ideal living conditions. I'll be perfectly honest. I'm very envious
yeah,
of the beast.
like Like he constantly like for hours he'll hop on my desk, rub on me, try to get attention from me. I'll pick him up, I'll put him down, and he just does that like for a half hour straight at times. Like it's ridiculous. Like he's that needy. Like I don't understand him. I've never met a cat that is so loving and so. I mean, he's headbutting my mic right now. Like he needs attention.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's a goofball. I love him. He's also super obnoxious. His name is Teddy Bear.
Although I don't
Oh
know if
yeah.
there's anything more you wanna drop to all the
Not really.
Viscera heads listening.
I'm actually pretty hungry. I need to eat.
Same actually. It's been a pleasure, man. Talking to you, dude. It's nice to see a developer, having a vision in the first place and then sticking with it, and taking cool ideas to their logical conclusions.
Yeah.
And the
Well,
animal
thank
is
you.
pretty nice too.
Yeah, the cats are they're a blessing. They're they they definitely get me through some days because boy howdy these creatures. So funny story actually. So with Teddy Bear, I so in the morning, so for context, I'm a Christian. So in the morning, I'll kneel down and I'll pray, and and while I'm praying, I have this stinker right here. He will be like circling around me, rubbing on me, begging for attention. He'll come up to me. He'll suck on my hair. And the other day while I was praying, I could tell he was doing something around me. I looked up, opened my eyes, and he's rolling around on the ground in front of me with his tongue sticking out. I'm like, "What are you, a dog?" like, like, well, thanks for showing everybody your butt.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
good beast.
Mhm.
You pray and then your cat bothers you. I have a cat. I have a cat who I'm pretty sure it must be divinely touched because he prays unprompted, and I haven't quite figured out what he means by this. And have this one picture I'm fucking blasting in DMs right now where he does this thing where he grabs your arm, um, and just stares at you intently. And I have this one image where he's just bathed in sunlight, and he looks it's one of the best pictures of Glorb I think I've ever seen. He's just and he does this
That's
all the
beautiful.
time. He's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'll be reading my Bible in the morning, and he'll be sitting on my bed, like lurched over my arm, sucking on my blankets. Like he's just, I don't like. He must be broken. Like that's the only explanation.
That's a pretty good defect, honestly. If I was you, I would not send him back to the factory. I think it's all right.
Oh no, he's not going anywhere. He's a lovely baby boy. He was originally my dad's cat, but I mentioned my grandma died earlier. What ended up happening was my parents were planning to retire down in Alabama, which is where my grandma lived, and then my dad had a heart attack. And so they were like, "Well, we should probably move down there while we still can." And so they got a condominium down here and went up to Alabama. And so they kind of bounce back and forth between the condominium. I live here and pay them rent. And so he got stuck with me here during the big transition because they didn't want to stress him out too much. And it kind of just eventually got to the point where it's like he became so attached to me that they were like, we can't take him.
You stole their
And
cat.
yeah, I know. And I love him. I would miss him if he were gone. So they were like, yeah, he's your cat now. So yeah, he's just a little sweetheart. But yeah. But yeah, I can let you go and stop telling you my cat stories.
I could sit here and listen to cat stories all day. I started the stream with the announcement that I'd found an old hard drive with pictures of my cat and his dead brother that I thought were gone forever, which was
Oh,
found the vault of.
I have yeah, I have a vault of like 1,600 cat pictures of him and my cat Smudge, because Smudge was like my rebound cat. Like I had after I think it was 2020, I had a cat named Bouncer that I've had since I was like a child, and like I think we got him when I was 4 years old, and I named him. Um, and in 2020 he passed away. He was like 18. I think he was 18 years old. Um, and so Smudge was the cat I got directly after he passed away, and I met him Smudge when he was 2 weeks old as a kitten. He was yeah at the time it was it was really rough to have like I've had this pet for like 18 years and now he's gone. Um, so Smudge is kind of he's very very special to me. But yeah, you're good.
I could
I
just
just noticed your. I
sit.
just noticed. I looked at the stream and I saw your cat, fly.
Yeah, he just kind of flops around like that and does questionable salutes on stream, and there's nothing we can
Is
do to
he?
stop him.
Is he a ragdoll?
No, he's a Norwegian forest cat, but he has.
Oh,
But
I remember I was looking at getting one of those a while ago.
I've owned a couple. They're so far they've been pretty great animals. This one is just like weird and doesn't work like normal cats, but the other ones have been relatively normal and very friendly. Very people always say dog-like, and that's kind of true. Like they're always kind of following you around and yeah. But he's just I
Hmm.
don't know. He just does this, which is just
Yeah, the thing for me with cats is every single cat I have owned is completely different personality wise from one another. And so one of the things I just love about cats is I'm like I never know what I'm gonna get because they're all kind of weird. Like I remember my cat Bouncer, I'd be laying on my bed and he would crawl up on my back and he would just start kneading. And then if I moved, he would get all pissed off and he would like nip me and then run away. And he had this teddy bear that he would drag throughout the entire house.
that's awesome.
Like
What
like where am I gonna find it now? Like
one of my cats I found is actually also a huge fan of moving objects. It's like a little plush bumblebee that I sometimes find in random places. Yeah.
but yeah.
Anyway, man, it's good talking to you. I'll free you so you can go have dinner. It's it's been cool, man. Keep
But
on
yeah,
keeping on.
I love dropping into folks' streams and chatting with them. It's always fun.
If I'd known you were coming, I would have like loaded a new save on the easiest difficulty and
I
just
would put my suit on.
no, I would have plugged in a controller and like shot every single scientist with you know, like valuable
I
bullets.
mean, I'll be honest. Like, oh gosh, I'm about to. So I spent a lot of time making sure the game played well with controller. Like, I hate playing FPS games with controllers. Like, we implemented a Metroid Prime lock-on system into
Holy shit.
VisceraFest and all the yeah, like VisceraFest actually plays really well with a gamepad. Like I hate playing games with shooters. I love playing VisceraFest with a gamepad because it doesn't play like any other first-person shooter with a controller. It's so fun.
Do you have gyro support? Like flick stick stuff?
We don't. We don't. I think we might try to implement it because I mean we haven't even looked at something like Steam Deck yet. Um, but yeah, I would love to like in general I would love to implement like as much as we can to make the game. I mean we are planning on doing console ports at some point. So, but yeah. You talked about you keep bringing you can't talk about the game at all because then we're gonna be here for 30 more minutes.
Yeah, we have to stop more, you know. Bring up like another retro shooter you want to make a spiritual successor of, you know.
But yeah, so you have a good one, buddy.
Hey, you too, man. Keep on being awesome, and I hope you know, not entirely selfishly that you never stop creating, because yeah, VisceraFest is awesome. But good luck, dude. I hope you make $10 million at the least.
Well, thank you. You have a good one.
All right, see you, man.
What a nice man he is. I'm going to stalk him now.